What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight podcast, powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Miami and Ole Miss, the winner goes to the Rock for the national championship. What an insane season, and it is still rolling. I am in the great state of Texas still. Historic Granbury, right there on Lake Granbury, fired up to let's get back to business, man. You're going to get tired of us. We're doing so many shows because there's so much to talk about. The portal just opened up today. That's going to be heating up. We'll be keeping you up to date with the latest on that. Got Lance Roffers, the professor, lined up. Later in the day, we'll get Steve Kim. All the All-Stars are going to be rolling through this weekend, through the beginning of the week, and then game day, baby, as this thing does not stop. It's amazing. One game ends, another one's lined up right away. It is just the best time of year. We could be firing coaches. This was Guidry watch last year. Now it is national championship watch. So we're moving on up, like my man 50 said. First of all, I want to shout out Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in here. How are you doing?
D, good morning. How are you?
Never better, man, and never better. That was electric. I haven't talked to you since you set the internet ablaze with that Ryan Day video, post-game Pete. My kids were asking right after the game, put on post-game Pete, put on post-game Pete. We were like a mass of people leaving the stadium. So the thing, man, all your catchphrases, we were at the game, people were saying just a wee bit different. Carter Davis hit the 50-yarder. I turn around. I see some people I had not said hi to, that had not told me they watched the show. They were just sitting behind me, and they're all like, wee bit different, wee bit different. So the catchphrases are live, man. It's worldwide, and we are ready for Ole Miss. How we doing?
Doing good, man. We'll see. It's interesting because I'm a fan of Ole Miss. I've been rooting for them, right? With everything that's gone on. I'm a fan of Lane Kiffin too. Like from a distance, I'm not saying I'd want him as my coach with all the craziness, but I think he's fun for the sport, right? And like there was a time when I was a young kid where I kind of had Ole Miss as like a second team, man. Jevin Sneed was my guy at QB, man. So it was just a random. Remember that year they beat Florida? I think that's when I really liked Ole Miss. The year they beat Florida, when then Tebow had the speech that ended up living in history there. Mm-hmm. But so we'll see. I may not have the same vitriol towards Ole Miss there, but it's an interesting matchup, man. I think just watching last night and then talking to people this morning, what I've been saying is they remind me of like a souped up premium SMU.
Great comp.
So, and then I seeing some stuff about Trinidad Chambliss being the quarterback who gets the ball out of his hands quickly. Who's number 2 and 3? Miller Moss and Kevin Jennings, right? So it's definitely the sort of formula to attack this defense. But the way they're playing, you have to know that Coach Heatherman and the defense is also going to have something prepared for Ole Miss. So really good looking matchup on paper here.
Yeah, and you said it. So all of our rivals have been decimated. You talk about Florida dead. I mean, deader than a doornail. Florida State deader than a doornail. Not only because Miami completely dominated both teams, but just what's happened to their programs. Ohio State, decisive physical butt whooping. Notre Dame, not only you beat them, but you hold them out of the playoffs. They have an emotional meltdown. It's a disaster for them as well. So really all of our rivals done. You don't really have to worry about them. I like all these teams in the Final Four. Like you said, Ole Miss, great story. I was cheering for them, especially with how Lane did them dirty. Excited to see what they were doing. Cheering hard for them yesterday. Indiana, obviously we're Mendoza homers. Plus the program has sort of moved up in a way that makes them an underdog, even though they're a great team. Oregon, always been one of my teams that I watch from afar with a lot of love. My dad's from there, came there from Cuba, so I always like the Ducks. And also, none of these teams are those blue bloods that we've been talking crap to, for our whole lifetime. Oregon's never won one. Indiana, I don't believe, has ever won one. Ole Miss, you go way back, they claimed one like in the 50s, I think, part of one. So, and then we obviously haven't won in a while, although we are the powerhouse of the four. So it's an exciting matchup for college football. I think you are seeing a lot of the blue bloods go back to the pack because of NIL. This is a perfect example of that, Pete. You talk about, we really did, I thought, a very thorough job last year breaking down the portal, not just Miami, but the whole nation. We did it through Group Chat Sports. We're going to be doing it in a segment form on this show, not only today, but going forward. So we're going to keep you guys up to date on the whole country's portal movement for a reason, because we did videos on Trinidad Chambliss. We did videos on Indiana's class as a whole and how we thought it was underrated. You saw Texas Tech yesterday, but Oregon, some of the things they did. These are all very active portal teams. Of course, Miami, but Oregon with Dylan Thieneman, right? Their left tackle, their defensive tackle. They did a lot of work in the portal, not volume, but specific. I believe they were a top 4 portal class, Oregon was. Indiana, we talked about their portal class a bunch. I loved what they did. You loved what they did. Hemby, Mendoza, etc. And then Ole Miss is always one of the top portal teams. Trinidad Chambliss from Ferris State being chief among them. And then, of course, Miami. So that, to me, is the big takeaway as we get to these Final Four, is the old logos, the old system where these top teams just pay players under the table, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the Alabamas, and just paid kids $40,000 under the table in a suitcase, and they dominated, and they just stacked lines of lines, first team, second team, third team of illegally, acquired players. Whole thing is different now, and that's why I think you're seeing a lot of turnover in terms of the Final Four. So, I'm excited.
Yeah, and I was texting you yesterday, but these games, they play like last night's game, I guess it played more like a Chiefs-Rams game, but they play like NFL style games, really, because everyone has good trenches at this point. And by the way, I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter from our fans saying that Ole Miss doesn't have, that their trenches are trash or they aren't great. I mean, they aren't on Miami's level, I don't think, but this is still, they've got some dudes in the trenches.
Yeah, they have size. They're SEC, high money, expensive team. I do think Miami's an advantage there. We'll talk about this matchup a ton over the course of the week, but I think the way Ole Miss gets rid of the ball fast, you compared it to Suka.
That's more so what I'm concerned with. But
yeah, I think that's going to protect the quarterback a lot. He didn't get sacked at all. They were top 5 in sack percentage against. Now they don't sack a lot on the other side. They got the Gunnar Stockton, but that's because Georgia is really extremely overrated. And I want to get to that point in a little bit here, Pete. But, Ole Miss does not get after the quarterback. They're maybe like 60-something in sack percentage. So that's going to be an advantage for us when we have the ball. I think really on offense, we have a very favorable matchup against Ole Miss. They're probably the worst defense we could have played. Then the defense, that's going to be more of the challenge in this ball game. But it was exciting to watch. I thought the games yesterday were interesting, right? We could talk about Texas Tech, Oregon. That was just a matter of, we always talk about portal quarterbacks, Pete. Don't we? That is the thing we talk about the most. Texas Tech, portal defensive line, outstanding. You talk about portal skill position, way improved. Portal offensive line, way improved. Where did they not go shopping in the portal? Quarterback, Barron Morton, hometown player, hometown 4-star actually for Texas Tech. He was awful. I never thought he was a very good player, to be honest with you. So, the fact that he put up numbers in the Big 12 inflated his performance, but he stunk, and I thought that was interesting from a just transfer portal standpoint. They did everything they wanted to do in the portal, Texas Tech did, except for the transfer, and now you have 4 transfer portal quarterbacks in the Final Four.
I wanted to bring up this tweet here from Ross Dellinger, and I think this is a very interesting one, man. I think Miami has probably benefited. I guess we'll never really know, but probably benefited the last couple of weeks with teams that have had some turnover on their staff. Ryan Day calling plays again. It's just something we'll never know how much of an impact it actually had on the game, but it didn't seem to be the same. We give Miami's defense a lot of credit for that, but they didn't seem to be in any sort of rhythm there offensively. And now you have this potentially, which, man, I have a very tough time thinking like a Charlie Weiss Jr. just leaves a team. Like this is, you're hearing a lot of stuff about tampering going on heavily with these coaches that are still there. Shocker, trying to bring guys over to LSU. But if you're Ole Miss, if you're the AD who has to make this decision, are you giving up on this opportunity when you have 2 weeks left here, potentially 2 games left here to be champs? Like, I don't know that they'll make that decision. If they do, that's a serious consequences, I think.
Yeah, the tampering thing was nuts. So those who don't know what Pete's talking about, there's an article from Ross Dellinger for Yahoo, same guy as you see in the quote right here, who obviously has sources in the building. I think
big LSU, yeah, big LSU. He's a national guy, but he's always been on the LSU beat there. So,
and I think he is talking in this particular instance with the information about to talk about to Ole Miss's collective, and he basically said that Ole Miss is worried that the offensive coaches who are on staff, at least for now, who knows who's going to coach their offense in the Fiesta Bowl, that the offensive coaches that are on staff were tampering with their own players, like trying to get the Ole Miss guys to go to LSU while they were coaching them to try to beat Georgia. It is an insane situation. Obviously, the teams rallied together. Those kids are awesome for Ole Miss. The fact that they did what they did, dealing with all this, like Chambliss, you could just tell, awesome leader. The teammates love him. You can't give him enough respect. But this is a crazy situation. It's certainly something Miami does not have to worry about. And I think the fact that you don't have to deal with the Carson Beck story, which, again, we're going to get to in a second, Pete. I do want to get to the whole Carson Beck leaving Georgia narrative and some of the stuff there. But the fact that we don't have to deal with any of that. There's no storylines. It's Ole Miss. Hey, good football team, good offense. We got to get ready to play and stop Trinidad Chambliss. There are no distractions right now, knock on wood, on the Miami side. And there are a ton of distractions on the Ole Miss side. No fault of the players.
It's funny, D, because I remember we did the video on Trinidad Chambliss last year on Group Chat Sports, and we're watching it. And I said on the show, I'm like, you know what, watching this, I wonder why Miami didn't go after this kid. He looked pretty good. Because, you know, that was when you get Beck at the last minute there, but you might have been in a very difficult situation if that didn't happen, because a lot of the other guys that you were trying to get done, it just wasn't the case. So I was like, man, like, Lane might have got him one here. We both said it, but I remember saying in particular, like, man, I don't know why Miami didn't go get this kid.
I remember it was late because really the story with Ole Miss was Austin Simmons, the Palm Beach quarterback.
Yeah. Who we liked him as well, and I still think that he can be a really good player somewhere. He just got to go somewhere where he's gonna play. Yeah,
and he started the season. So Chambliss came in during the middle of the year. So it's like the plan was always, it seemed to be Simmons, and then Chambliss would be a backup. Obviously, you watch his highlights at Ferris State. He was playing against, like, you know, it was D2, D3? Was it D2 or D3? It was a D2,
yeah.
Right? So it was.
Which, by the way, let's get something straight there. D2 is not. That's not even FCS. FCS is a higher level of FCS is D1. Right, we see guys from North Dakota State. Miami has Marty Brown this year, one of the better players on the team, one of the game winners for Miami the other day, and he playing at that level. D2 is a whole different, step back. So you got to give him credit for getting acclimated to the speed of the game as quickly as he did there. And they have confidence right now. So it's going to be I think it's a juicy matchup. It's a fun one. Right. I think it's going to be, in terms of like TV ratings, you're in the semifinals, so all these games have juice. But I think the college football world is pretty captivated by what, Ole Miss's situation and how they're winning without Kiffin. And then Miami's Miami. We understand people are gonna watch whether they love us or they hate us. So
yeah, and I could not agree more. Just in terms of the matchups, I thought this Alabama Georgia stuff got very, very boring. Right. It not just for me, but I think for the country, because it was the same thing. They just stacked players. I mean, it was great to watch great players on the big stage. It was cool to see, like, hey, Devontae Smith here, Jalen Carter there, whatever. But it was just so boring that the same two teams had all the players every single year. And they were right, close to each other. There was no diversity of like matchups, uniforms, geography. It was just kind of the same old. And I think this reset with the NIL, with the portal, has been a lot of fun, obviously, for a Miami fan moving on up, but just the fact that, you're seeing these different teams. And I want to highlight something, Pete. Let me know if my service is good and I can pull up links and stuff like that.
You seem way better than I have the links that you asked me to. All
right. Well, shout out to Granbury, Texas, holding it down. Historic Granbury, Texas, and Lake Granbury. They got better service up for some reason than this giant multi-million-dollar Gaylord Hotel in Dallas.
I told you, man, you got a lot of people on that server.
True. There's no one out
Not
here.
made for streaming.
There's no one out here except for some birds. But yeah, so we said this exact point on the show, Pete, for months. And now I saw Daniel Jeremiah, one of my favorite analysts. He's an NFL draft guy, former scout, also covers the NFL extensively. And he made the point, which I thought was right on point, which was, why are we seeing what we're seeing? Well, here it is right here. You said SEC defensive line play isn't nearly as good as it's been in the past. Miami, Oregon, Texas Tech, and Indiana have looked much more dominant along the defensive line. And I could not agree more. That is why you're seeing the parity. SEC, obviously they're geographically located close to SEC schools, a lot of the top defensive linemen. But on top of that, they were just paying these guys 40 G's under the table. I mean, there's no this the facts. I mean, everybody knows it. My guy Brazil Kane, Abe, you see him in the comments, first comment, pointing out Mark Emmert, who was a former LSU chancellor who turned a blind eye to all this SEC cheating. But nowhere did that affect the game more than the defensive line. Defensive line is always the money position, always has been. So when there's dirty money and teams are benefiting, that distorted the defensive line play. And when you got to January, late December, like the teams with these great defensive lines, you could not beat them. Remember, like you'd have Oklahoma scoring 1 million points and they play one of these Alabama defensive lines and the whole thing went away. It was like every single year, or Washington or whoever. So now you are seeing that parity come because the defensive line parity is there. And if you go and look at Oregon, Indiana, Ole Miss, Miami, the last 4 teams in this tournament, the best defensive line, the defensive line that is going to get paid the most going forward, they play in Coral Gables.
Yeah. And look, we're going to get more into the game throughout the week. We'll have, we say throughout the week, we're here. It's game week. So we'll have Lance on later this show. I think this question here, D, from Green Tree All-American, he says, how do we prevent Bane and Hesed and Mesidor from huffing and puffing? And we saw them, they I don't know if you've watched the full broadcast back of the game, D, but they actually highlighted it. There was one moment, I think, near the end of the first quarter there, at start of the second quarter, where they showed both of them on the sideline, like out. And there were moments like later in the game where you had a pretty young defensive line unit out there. We saw a lot of Armando Blunt snaps. We saw Scroggins out there. Booker Pickett was playing, right? Like there was he had a snap on a third down, right? So I think with a team like SMU, I keep saying SMU, Ole Miss, that's going to run a lot of plays and have this tempo, you almost have to, I think, pick and choose your spots with these guys, right? You may not have them play a first and second down on a drive to have them ready on a third down, right? There's going to be, I don't want to call them throwaway plays, but there's just so many, they run so many plays. A lot of them are just like, throw out to the outside, pick up 1 or 2 yards, because they use the pass game as an extension of the run game so well that I think you have to pick and choose your spots a little bit with these guys, so you have them ready for money downs and money situations.
No doubt. And look, we're going to talk about this matchup a million ways. I would say Trinidad Chambliss is going to get a lot of the attention, but to me, the key to this offense, the key to stopping this offense, number 5, Lacey. I think he's the best running back in the country besides Jeremiah Smith. He is extremely fast. He has size. He has moves. Ahmad Hardy for Missouri is great. There are other great backs in the country. For me, this guy is the key to their team, and I would take him over anybody except for Love, who's no longer playing college football. So major challenge ahead in that regard. Much better player than Bo Jackson, who we just saw for the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's going to be a very, very interesting challenge for this Miami defense. But if you pull up these tweets, let's talk about this right here, because I wanted to get to this, which is watching this Georgia game yesterday. I was rooting like crazy for Ole Miss. I don't know how you were watching the matchup. Number one, I didn't want to deal with the Carson Beck playing against Georgia narrative.
Yeah, I didn't want to hear that all week.
But I had to pull this up because this could have been the narrative of my beat Georgia in this game, but we don't have to go there because Georgia already lost. But Carson Beck left Georgia. Georgia thought they upgraded in addition by subtraction. Carson Beck's old team, watching him from home, Gunnar Stockton, has now lost as many games at Georgia. This is a Georgia stat, in 16 starts as Carson Beck lost in 27 starts at Georgia. So Beck at Georgia 24-3, Gunnar Stockton at Georgia 13-3. Of course, Carson Beck has since gone on to Miami, where he's won 12 games and is in the Final Four trying to win a championship. So, Gunnar Stockton played fine yesterday. Played good yesterday. I mean, Gunnar Stockton is a gamer, 100%. It's not like he's like holding Georgia back himself. He is a gamer, super tough, competitive, made some throws, can run. I do think he's limited in what he can do compared to a Beck. The running dimension helps them, but he's not going to sit back and be a drop back passer. Doesn't have the same passing efficiency that Beck does and did. But overall, I just think Georgia as a program has fallen back tremendously. I really think Kirby Smart deserves Coach of the Year consideration for winning the SEC with this team, because you looked at Josh Horton was playing a bunch. They had some really crappy players out there.
I'm glad you said that, because what my point was going to be, I think looking back on it, I don't know that they actually believed that Stockton was better than Beckty. I think it was two things. I think it was one, you probably knew that you were going to get Stockton for multiple years, right? Which is always a nice thing. You had seen enough of him to say, all right, he can win us games, right? And then just naturally you had the injury issue with Beck, right? That you say, we know what he is at his best, but are we going to get that? Maybe we get 2 years. I think a lot of what we heard coming out of there was almost they had to justify it for the public, right? To he's not a great leader, he's detached from his teammates, all that. But their mistake here, not mistake, I think it's just what we talked about earlier with the playing field being level, is Stockton's a good QB, but I don't think they have that same talent that we've seen around him right now to be able to ride that to a title right now, which we saw wasn't the case. They were a championship tested team. I think the way that they when they played Ole Miss earlier in the year, it was another great game, and they stuck in there and won that game. They won a ton of close games this year. So I think, like, as a team as a whole, they were a good team, but there's not those same guys, man. Not those same guys that we've seen. Just cyborgs.
Not at all. And Mr. Black saying Kirby lost in this game, I think referring to probably some of the aggressive play calls that Kirby had going forward and stuff like that. I think Kirby was going for it so much because he knows his team's not that good. They should have lost to Tennessee. They should have lost to Florida. They should have lost to Ole Miss the first time. They don't have a lot of first rounders. They are nowhere near what we just saw against Ohio State as far as the dudes, which they usually are. That is Georgia. So I think they're just very, very much diminished, and that is why you saw them lose to Ole Miss. And Stockton Gamer did his thing. It's not like he's the reason that they've lost 3 games in 16 after losing only 3 in 27 with Beck. But I do think he's limited in some of the things he can do, and the whole team as a whole is limited. And let's get to these guys, Pete, because I always wish our former players well. Some of them we've interviewed and stuff, so I don't want to trash all these guys. I don't feel the need to. But this kind of thing, when they won the SEC, what was the point of all this? The middle fingers here, as you see the picture for those listening on audio, you got Josh Horton, former defensive tackle that Miami signed, who Miami loved and wanted to use, but the guy was always injured. He got paid a lot to sit in the injury tent. He's out here with 2 middle fingers up. Jaden Harris holding the trophy.
Listen, I told you before, Jaden Harris, I can see why he felt a certain type of way. And by the way, he's not doing it. He's just holding the trophy.
Yeah, he's holding the trophy. We'll spare Jaden Harris.
Jaden Harris, I'm sparing. I've been sparing him when we had this original discussion. The other 2, for sure, just unnecessary.
Yeah, Colby Young with the upside down U after University of Miami signed him out of JUCO when no one knew he was any good.
Gave him a shot, yeah.
Gave him a shot. And then look, he wanted more money. Miami gave that opportunity to Isaiah Horton, who was better than Colby Young. Isaiah Horton ended up wanting more money. We gave it to CJ Daniels, who's better than Isaiah Horton. CJ Daniels still playing. Isaiah Horton and Colby Young, no longer playing. But this picture, by the way, Horton never did anything negative to Miami.
And by the way, I don't think it was just money situation. I've said before, there was the Ty Simpson thing, which again, you can play the results or not play anymore, but he wanted to play with a very good high school buddy of his. So that had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and Isaiah Horton never badmouthed Miami. Josh Horton here with the middle fingers. But this picture right here with the grasses, the headline reading, the grass is greener. This is after the SEC championship game. Obviously, the grass was not greener because they are sitting at home while Miami is playing on the biggest stages in the world with everybody watching. But yeah, I got to say, I was cheering like crazy for Georgia to lose. I love seeing these blue bloods fall back to the pack. Really, to me, Pete, seeing all these teams, we talk about Alabama and how, I mean, Alabama, you want to talk about taking a program that was built on toughness and turning them soft. Alabama is unrecognizable how soft that program is. And we've said it all year. I have never liked Alabama. I thought Ty Simpson carried them the whole year. They were first game, forget the fact that FSU smoked them. They were passing on 3rd and short and 4th and short every single time, which to me signified like, hey, this is a culture shift. It wasn't like a switch up or, hey, we're going to be aggressive on 3rd and short to catch them in explosive. They were always passing on 3rd and 4th and short because they just didn't trust their physical running game. So Alabama's gone soft. On the Georgia side, since we're talking about Georgia, I don't think that their culture's changed. I think Kirby's still trying to coach them up to be tough and physical. I just think their talent's taking a step back because they're not paying NIL to great high school players. So, and really, quite frankly, portal guys. So, you've seen them. They're still coached the same way, which Alabama is less of a talent problem than I think it's a coaching and culture problem. I just think they got that soft West Coast mentality that what I call Big 12 loser ball football. You can call it Pac-12 loser ball football in the case of DeBoer. I just hate that style of football. And we always have fans in the comments when Mario does bro ball. Mario, this is tough and physical, stupid caveman football. Why don't we play Big 12 style? Why don't we light up the scoreboard? Look at these stats in October. When you get to this time of the calendar, it is about physical football. It's about Mark Fletcher knocking people out. It's not about passing on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 like Alabama does. And you saw they got completely exposed as soft. They have talent at Alabama. They got completely exposed. And then Georgia, the talent.
And you have to play the matchup, play the game. Like Steve Kim, who I don't know if you'll be around for that show, but we're going to have him on at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Steve always talks about it. Like the way you win these games is different than the way that you should win the ACC games. Like you could throw it around the yard a bit in those ACC games if you want to. Like hypothetically, you should have the guys to do that. But these games are just it's tighter. I mean, you hear about it in the NBA all the time in the playoffs. Like the game just becomes it's a more possession by possession game. It's the same thing here.
100%. And by the way, Mo, we're going to get to your super chats. Don't worry. 100%. And I think, look, the truth is Ole Miss, we're going to need a little bit of that explosiveness too. I think you might see some of that razzle dazzle with Malachi Toney come back in this Ole Miss game. Although you do have to run it a lot because they don't run the ball well. And Mark Fletcher's been such a beast for you. But they don't stop the run well. I'm sorry, Ole Miss doesn't. So there's different ways to play against different opponents, but you have to be physical, man. And that is why Miami was able to do what they did. The next 2 games, if Miami's able to get to Miami Gardens and win it at home, those are going to be the hardest games because they're the last 2, right? I mean, it always gets harder just because it requires so much to deal with the distractions.
I don't know, man. That Ohio State win seemed easier than A&M.
Well, yeah. Opponent-wise, I do believe that NFL draft picks, if you add them up, Ohio State is by far going to be the best team in this tournament. And then Texas A&M, I think, is going to be sneaky. I think Texas A&M is going to be sneaky when you look at their draft picks, when you see some of the guys they get picked. So talent-wise, I don't think the competition is going to get harder. I think it's actually probably going to get a little worse. Pure talent-wise.
I think the staff thought and this isn't saying anything too crazy, but I think the staff believed that the team that they just played in Ohio State was the most talented team in the country from top to bottom.
No doubt. And also, we'll call them these. It's not just talent, right? Those guys were ready to rock, right? Styles, Downs, Jeremiah Smith. They had talent that was
Downs was sticking out there. Downs earned my respect, man.
The fact that Miami won the way they did, meaning being the better team against Ohio State, like physical domination, like whooping their ass, is shocking because Ohio State is they are really, really talented. And when you watch, that was my big takeaway from yesterday as I'm watching these games. And look, Miami's lost twice this year to teams that are not littered with NFL picks. So nothing I am saying or Pete is saying is like, oh, Miami is going to just cruise out here. We're going to be losing years of our lives stressing about this next game and then potentially the game after. This is the semifinals, baby. This is real deal. But in terms of just ability and team quality, when I was watching the games yesterday, I was saying, man, Ohio State's better than this team. Ohio State's better than this team. Aside from Indiana, which, they're they're firing on all cylinders, and the way they're playing is so outstanding that you have to respect what they're doing. But I thought the other teams, Ohio State was clearly better than, and then with Indiana, more talented than. Indiana, just they're rocking and rolling, which is why they are the Big Ten champs and the number 1 overall seed. We got a guest, by the way. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
No, I was going to say, I believe our guest is here.
Yeah, so real quick before we bring him in, let me talk about a couple of our partners here who we love. One of them is going to be right there in the spotlight because we're going to get a lot of injury questions, I'm sure. Overall, pretty healthy team, as well as you could hope going into the semifinal, although there are some injuries we got to deal with. But shout out to the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute, who helped get Keontae Scott ready to make a huge impact. If you consider yourself an athlete, just an active person, you know how hard it is to sit on the injured list with pain or injury, maybe even try to hack your own rehab. But don't let your movement or performance slip. Consult the experts at the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute, whether it's elite performance like the Miami Hurricanes or just everyday movement. The experts at the University of Miami Sports Medicine Institute can get you back on your game. Set an appointment today at uhealthsports.com. Also, listen, I know you guys had those hangovers on New Year's. Don't lie. You guys, on New Year's Day, you were watching Indiana, Oregon, probably a Texas Tech game. Your head was split from all that champagne. You want all the bubbles and no troubles, all the hang and no hangover. Call BUZZN, BUZZN. Drink, BUZZN.com. Promo code FIRST35 will get you 35% off. Go to the website. If you're local, you can go to Big Daddy's Liquors. Grab yourself a case or 10. Drink, BUZZN.com. 7.5 milligrams of real THC-infused seltzer so you catch the buzz without that hangover. That's BUZZN, BUZZN. And one more, Pete, because I got to shout out my boy who was all over the lobby at the team hotel. He was more famous than anybody there. He was more famous than some of the former players, and that is the Orchid Man, ORCHID Man, Florida.com, the Orchid Man, South Florida's landscape artisans, premier landscape artisans from Palm Beach all the way down through the Keys. Dial 786-271-0332. Set an appointment today. 10% off your first service for a limited time only. They will make landscape maintenance easy. Irrigation, tree stump grinding, hurricane prep, just the daily maintenance that you don't want to think about. They will be your quarterback for the whole process. It could be your own property, your residential property, or it could be making your commercial property look even better, get that curb appeal, and take your business to the next level. Call OrchidManFlorida.com, ORCHID manflorida.com. Now, brought to you by our friends at Cannata Financial. It is upon further review with the man himself, Lance Roffers, college football semifinalist, analyst, Lance Roffers. How are we doing?
Life is good, my friend. Life is good. How about you guys?
Shoot, never better. I'm on Central Time, so we're on the same page here. Finally, I'm out here in Texas.
That's the best time.
Yeah, man, I'm enjoying the extra hour. But we're going to get into Ole Miss because that's going to be an interesting breakdown. I don't think we'll be able to have you on before then because that's next Thursday. Maybe we'll have you on again to break down Ole Miss with a little more detail. But this Ohio State game, you're a draft junkie like myself, Lance. You know how many NFL guys are on this Ohio State team. I'll be honest, and I haven't done the math, but I think I'm right on this. Pete, let me know. I think there might be more NFL first-rounders on Ohio State than we saw in all the games yesterday. Am I wrong on that?
I mean, like combined?
I mean, Ohio State's going to get 5 next year. I don't think there were 5 combined first-rounders on the rest of the teams yesterday. So that was an extremely talented opponent.
Texas Tech, I don't know how – I don't know what, maybe one of those D linemen is a first rounder.
Bailey, I know we're getting off Trance, Lance, but I'm setting you up. I'm doing the long setup for you. So think about your answer while we're doing this.
Dante Moore will probably be a first rounder if he goes that game.
Fernando Mendoza. Probably
Pons if he.
No, he's too small.
Yeah, I don't know though. I think
First round,
I think someone might end up falling in love with him at the end of the first
but
round.
you see how that's how talented Ohio State is, man. Look at this conversation we're having. So, anyways, bringing it back to Lance. Extremely talented team. How did Miami do it? And just your overall impressions of the win.
You guys had me on last week, and I kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit. Going into the game, I was confident that Miami could match their physicality because, frankly, I was quite surprised at the lack of physicality that Ohio State had, especially on the offensive line. I really kind of get used to, those Big Ten teams with those big offensive lines that are powerful and they kind of build their programs a lot of times on power. You just kind of, your mind just kind of has biases, right? And that's just the way it works. And so when you're watching their best team, although Indiana this year is probably their best team, but when you're watching their most talented team, you expect to see more talent on the offensive line than what I did see, right? I don't know his name at all. It's like Severit, how to pronounce it or whatever, but he's talented. That kid's pretty talented. He'll get drafted somewhere in the third, fourth round area, so he's an NFL player, but probably as a guard, they'll probably kick him inside. He plays some tackle for him. Other than that, their center was solid, not great. Their left guard, nice player, but again, not great. Their right guard, was a sieve, right? Like they literally were benching their right guards coming into the game and then had to do it again in this game. And then the right tackle, he probably is still waking up in cold sweats over Ruben Bain, So going into the game, I thought we had a chance there. I saw Ohio State's defensive line being better than they played in this game. Now, I think that may be a reflection of some of the competition they played, right, and allowing them to kind of maybe look a little bit better than they were. To me, their nose tackle, he looks the part. I thought he played okay, but I'll tell you who, really showed up in this game, maybe a maligned from the fan base at times, and maybe sometimes on my reviews as well, he gets called out a little bit, but Brockermeyer really played a very good game in this one. I felt like they set him up for success a little bit better as well. He was a little more of like the duo man and the partner in crime, and then released to the second level. And he did a really good job of releasing to the second level and getting on to Sonny Styles, who's kind of their playmaking linebacker. They've got Reese, who's a little bit of a split edge type. He does play outside linebacker halftime, then rushes the passer quite a bit as well. So those are a couple of things that, going into the game, I thought Miami would be able to match up. Where I didn't think they were going to match up as well as they did is outside, right? Jeremiah Smith, he got his. You kind of expect that. He probably was the best player on the field, to be quite honest with you.
On any field.
Yeah, he's pretty good. You guys had me on last year, when he was a senior in high school, and I told you guys then that he was the best player I had seen in Florida for 3 years. So, meaning as a sophomore in high school, I thought he was the best player in Florida, and he's kind of lived up to that. He was great in this game. But on the other side, I'm a big fan of Tate. But Miami pretty much eliminated him in this game. Some of that's due to the pressure that they had, but also, you got to give O'Connor his flowers. You got to give Frederic, before he got injured, his flowers. Lucas, stepped up, played a great game. The freshmen out there playing some snaps outside against Ohio State in a quarterfinal playoff game, doing a good job. And then, Jabari, with the punt down there as well. So in the secondary, they showed up better than I expected them to going into this game. I think I said even, it was probably 55-45 for Ohio State, on a neutral field. I think if you asked me after watching the game, Miami was the better team. I think I would flip that percentage to where Miami would win more than Ohio State would win, just based on watching them line up. And that was no fluke. Miami's physicality was just at a different level. Their violence was at a different level. The way they were hitting in the secondary, as a longtime old head, I kind of got proud just watching the way it's starting to look like it should look out there. Something I think Mario has really constantly talked about, the way you just want that to look. Make no mistake about it. Individually and on Ohio State's defense, it's one of the best of the last 20 years, right? They have multiple first round picks there when they want to come out. You know, you've got Reese, you've got Downs, you've got Styles. I think he could go in the first round. You've got McDonald. They've got some of their freshman corners and their young corners. Eventually, those guys got a chance to go first round. Those were some pretty good players as well. Curry, he doesn't have the juice of a first rounder. He's probably more of, you know, a second, third round type who's going to like kind of be a strong physical edge. But he's my kind of player. I really like him just because of the motor that he has. I don't think Jackson's going to make first round. He's probably going to be more of, you know, your third round type as well. But I just named about 9 positions, you know, out of their 11 that are going to go day 1, day 2. And that right there is an unbelievable collection of talent. But Miami's coaching staff did an awesome job of offsetting some of that talent, and Miami's individual players themselves on the offensive side, I think they kind of took that to heart, you know, hearing how much Ohio State's defense was talented and how, you know, basically this was the best defense of whatever many years you want to go back to, right? Alabama 11, you know, you even heard some 01 Miami's, you know, come up as far as them being the best defense since. And I felt like up front, that offensive line was physical. I felt like Lofton, you know, showed up in the blocking game again, you know, at times. You know, he took on Curry one-on-one, washed him down on a absolutely huge play in the fourth quarter on that drive, you know, that salted things away. So those are kind of like the impressions that really surprised me. I think some of my PTSD and those biases I talked about earlier from just being an old head, you know, where maybe you don't see Miami quite in the same light as some of these other programs, is starting to fade a little bit after you watch these teams, you know, go up against Miami one-on-one, and Miami looking like the more physical, more violent team. So I was just proud. I was just proud to sit and watch that.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Lofton. Obviously, you know, is my guy. But one of the reasons I liked him before the year so much was because he was physical, right? Mario said he'd go move to linebacker and he'd be our best linebacker, and you did not see that in the first half of the year. And I really think the injury helped because he had a shoulder injury on top of some lower body stuff. He was messed up. So I think the shoulder injury and just some mental kind of in his head limited his ability to hit those wham blocks, to get those seals like he did on that big run to in the fourth quarter. He just looks healthier. I think the physicality is coming in, and when the physicality is there, now he's more of that fullback type that you can move around and use in different ways and then exploit mismatches. But Lance, I want to ask you about the touchdown to Mark Fletcher, the pass, right? Because I know that got you going. I am sure it wasn't a trick. I'm stealing this line from Aaron Murray, which was, it wasn't a trick play, but it was a tricky play to get Fletcher open for that touchdown. So what do you see on that touchdown where we lined up jumbo and take the quarterback power and got Mark Fletcher the ball?
Yeah, that wasn't a trick play at all. You know, they brought in an extra lineman. I think they may have actually brought in 2. I haven't studied it to that depth yet, but it was a guard H counter. So what I mean by that is you got your guard pulling, you got your H, which is kind of, he was offset in this case. So we did have a sniffer on the play, but we also had an H back offset on the play, right? And so you pulled your guard and your H, right, which is a counter look, which is a power run play it traditionally, right? And then what you do is you have your quarterback, you know, take one step forward, right, which in that case, you know, simulates quarterback power. And so then you have a rail, or you could, you know, some people call it a rail, some people call it a wheel, depending on what you're doing with your running back, right? But what happens is it's almost like a play action pass in many ways, because when your quarterback takes that step forward and you're a linebacker, so it's real important that your linebacker is reading his keys, and when he sees the guard H pull, he's reading a power run play, and he knows he has to insert to whatever gap he's responsible of that time. That depends on what the defense does. But when he sees that counter and then the step forward from the quarterback, he knows he has to fit, right? He's responsible for a gap in that. He's not a force player. He's not just trying to contain. He's responsible for a gap. And he knows on a short yardage play like that, he's got to get him down, right? And it has to fill his gap. And so Styles, I believe, is actually who did it. He took a step forward because he saw the power action and the step forward. So to me, it's like a play action pass, quite honestly, right? And then you have your rail for your running back. And as soon as Styles stepped forward, that play was dead. He could not recover and get out there. I think you got to give some flowers to the running backs in this game as well for their hands. You know, Marty Brown with a huge catch on that 3rd and 2, later in the game where everyone was talking about Tony may have been offsides. I think there's a little bit of an optical illusion in those pictures you see as well because the camera's a little offset. It's not right down the line. And I watched it back. He does actually check with the ref. You know, he puts his little hand out, you know how they do, and gets a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So it wasn't offsides because of that reason, in my opinion. But nice catch to finish by Fletcher as well. How many times do you see a running back whenever the pass, isn't like right out front and perfectly placed where, maybe they struggle with that a little bit? I felt like in this game, multiple times, the running backs made some nice plays with in the receiving game. So.
Lance, I don't know if this is really a question, but more of an observation. It just, and we've kind of talked about this, but just seemed like such a complete, coaching effort in terms of no penalties. And like, I'm sure we can nitpick it and really, I'm sure you'll do that when you get into the film. But I have a hard time like second guessing a single decision that was made. Like I'm talking about like, man, they should have ran there. They should have thrown. The only thing that during the game I was like, man, was when you were near field goal range and there was 3rd and 20 and they took the shot there to the end zone, which I'm sure obviously the Ohio State was ready for it, but there was an aggressive play call. Maybe if you pick up 5 to 10 yards on the next play there, you're in field goal range for Carter Davis and you get some points on that drive. That's probably the only thing I would have second guessed, but just clean effort overall.
Yeah, I'll kind of respond to several things there, but the second guessing, we can do that a lot because we know the result. So we know, we know on the first or the second down, whichever it was, where they get sacked, right? We know, maybe if we could do it over again, we'd probably just run the ball, knowing we probably got a field goal there. But let me also say, from what the coaches, get a little frustrated with all that second guessing. So let's say the play works. Let's say that pass play that they have, right, and they hit a touchdown. No one, not you, not me, not Danny, not the fans on Twitter are bitching about it, right? They're happy now. So that's the life of a coach, right? You get judged when other people have 100% of the information and you have very limited amount of information when you make the decision. I think it's always important for listeners and readers and tweeters to remember that fact. You're basically just trying to set your team up with the most win probability percentage that you can with your decisions based on the information you have. Would I have played it a little differently? Probably, because I'm a little more conservative by nature in that situation. And I know the value based on the way the game was going. If we get a field goal there, go up 17-0, I think we were up 14-0 at the time, that happened. You go up 17-0 there. Now you're a 3-score game instead of a 2-score game, where one play now gets you, 14-7, and then it's a game, right? Once it's 14-7, now it's a game. But if you're 17-0, it just changes the flow of everything and the decisions that coaches have to make to try and make up 3 scores. So maybe I would have played it a little bit different in that situation. It was a little frustrating not to get a field goal there. But I kind of want to touch on the fact that, to me, the Miami coaching staff outcoached the Ohio State coaching staff. And coming into the game, one of the narratives that you hear, and I even clapped back on a few on Twitter about, you're going to find out about Mario in these big games and how he's not a coach that can, win these games, or he's just not a good coach in those situations. I mean, let me tell you, Miami changed their offensive game plan to attack Ohio State. And I'm also a little happy because it was the way I suggested they do it, right? They did all kinds of slicing. They did all kinds of C inserts. And I'll kind of walk you through what a C insert is. So a C is C gap. right? And an insert is you insert a blocker into the play formation that isn't there at the setup, right? Oftentimes it's either a puller, but what Miami did so much was we inserted receivers into the C gap. And that kind of is something I should have talked a little bit earlier when I was talking about the physicality. Our receivers physicality in this game was absolutely next level. CJ Daniels, Marion, and Malachi Tony. I mean, I've said it on here several times. One of the big separators for a Malachi Tony, at his size, is his willingness to get muddy, get dirty, and the way that he will just put himself in there in those fits. You saw it on that screenplay to CJ Daniels on that third down late on the touchdown drive. Malachi Tony is absolutely, given his soul for, that play. But early on, we inserted Malachi Tony into the C gaps 2 different times on run plays, which were key in this game, running those C inserts instead of just trying to run those A gap powers or inside zones where you're relying on, Brockemeyer to block their McDonald kid one-on-one. We didn't try and do that in this game. We really set Brockemeyer up for success. And so that was one of the big things. And then on the opposite side, you got Ryan Day. He's a good coach. Ohio State's not doing the things that they're doing over and over if he's not a good coach, right? And he took over play calling duties in this game. And, Heatherman just put him in a blender. And one of the ways that he really put him in a blender is attacking the open side. And when I talk about an open side, what I'm really just saying is there's no tight end over there. There's no offset running back over there, right? And Miami just repeatedly attacked them with creepers, safety inserts to the open side. Ohio State had no answer for it, right? And then up front, we talk about, the pass rush, and pass rush is wonderful, right? But you've got to earn the right to run the passer. And you do that by run defense. You do that by maintaining your gaps and your discipline. Ohio State, 0 scrambling yards, right? So their quarterback in this game contributed absolutely nothing in the run game in this particular game. Whereas, coming in, you're not going to say that Carson Beck is the scrambler of the two, right? But Carson Beck contributed some of the biggest plays in the last 20 years for Miami in this game with his legs. There are a couple of different times where, Beck he really just put his actual career on the line out there in that game, by the way that he attacked Ohio State defensive players, shoulders first, head up, trying to get those first downs. He did not have to do that. I mean, he's a player that in, 3 months.
Don't say that, Lance. He had to, man.
He did not have to. And you see it all the time where quarterbacks
I don't know if he doesn't lower that shoulder, he's not getting that first down.
He doesn't get it. But that's what I'm telling you, right? He made the decision to do those things for a player in 3-4 months, is going to be trying to hear his name in the NFL draft. And he put that all out there. And some of the narratives, that you heard when he signed here and when he came here, you haven't seen those things this year, right? You saw a bad game against Louisville. No one will dispute that fact. I contend the interception against SMU was a more of a great play by SMU and should have been a penalty on Trader anyway. But I digress there. I kind of like to hop around a little bit, but those are some of the ways that, from a coaching standpoint, they really defeated Ohio State's coaches in this game and were part of the reason. And then you can't talk about coaches putting players in position to make success or to be successful without talking about Keontae Scott. His jump, his pick six. It was absolutely all film study, right? It was a 4-0. And so he knows there's no eligible receiver on the other side. So there's not going to be, a pass to the other side. So his eyes are he's reading 2 keys. He's reading, okay, how is the back receiver on the 4-0 offset? He's the one off the line, right? How is he lining up? I highlighted it, in the Texas A&M game. Texas A&M, to me, a couple times gave away that it was going to be a screen based on the way their receiver was lining up. He was a little more standing up straight, like you do when you take a step back or you stand and turn to catch the screen, right? And then whenever he was going out into routes, he was a little more leaned forward, like he was trying to spring, like think of a sprinter out of the gates, right? And so I identified that. And if I identify, a guy on the couch doing finance, these millionaire coaches are identifying those things as well, right? And to me, he's identifying how that guy is lining up, and is he giving anything away as far as that being a screen? You got a 4x0, so there's no eligible receiver on the other side. And then you're looking at Jeremiah Smith, right? So if Jeremiah Smith, as soon as he releases, is not releasing to where he's going to be in a route, if he's releasing to where he's stock blocking or where he's trying to wall you off, it's screen. Now, you can screen and go, right? So they could have tricked him, and he probably gets beat on that, but they didn't. And that play, I mean, guys, that is a minimum of 10-point play. They're already in field goal range there. Got a real strong chance of scoring a touchdown just based on the fact that, they just hit a big play to Jeremiah Smith. But wow, what a play. And that was a game changer to go 14-0 right there. Canes are letting them hang a little bit right there and throwing it out on, national television that they're here to win this game. And I'll tell you what, that was the moment when I started pacing. I did not sit down hardly at all, from that moment on, because at that point, my heart was in it. I'm like, holy bleep, you got to win now. It's 14-0. You got to win now. You have absolutely dominated this game. One of the things that the coaches can absolutely talk about, we talk about the fact we didn't have a lot of penalties. We played a great game. We had 3 fumbles. We had at least 3 fumbles. I can't remember if we had a 4th. I can't remember if Beck got one back as well. I'm just going off memory when I do this today because, New Year's and all that. Don't have my BUZZN on. So,
Lance, I wanted to bring this up real quick because Cran Rider, some people are not. Cran Rider says we're going back to where we're invincible because we didn't learn the first time how to act. I mean, a couple things on that. One, we're not playing the game. We can talk however we see things. And number 2, we saw concerns early in the year with Miami. Go back and look at my instant reactions on some of those close wins we had. You saw some cracks in the armor. But at the same time, we're now seeing this team do this to Ohio State. Texas A&M last week winning the way, winning a cage match there. So I think we can talk about the team a little bit differently because we haven't seen the team win games like this before.
And by the way, Lance was on upon further review before the Louisville game, and he was the one ringing a lot of alarms. And before we even get further, I want to remind everybody that upon further review is brought to you by Cannata Financial. My man Sebastian, he was out there in Dallas. He was there at the Texas Live watching DJ Diesel, Shaquille O'Neal DJ. So he was partying before the game. I know he was partying after the game. So Lance, tell everybody what Cannata Financial can do for their small business.
Yeah, we got a promotion going on right now. Basically, if you're a service-based business, earning under $1 million a year, and you just need more clarity and control over what's happening on your finances as you kind of move into the new year. We are into 2026 already. Can you believe it? They're introducing a 2026 planning and profit package. And it's focused on one-on-one consulting. It's designed to help you step into the new year with confidence and a strategy. A lot of times small business owners, that's not what they do for, their professional gig. They're trying to grow their business. They're trying to, be engaged and be the expert in whatever it is that you're doing with your business. And maybe you just need a little help, to have that confidence in your finances, your strategy. And that's exactly what Cannata Financial can do. They can be your CFO all in one place. They support your business the way you want it to run. At the end, you'll walk away with a complete financial plan and budget for 26, pricing guidance, KPIs tailored to what it is that you do, and just a clear action plan to improve your business's health. Normal pricing for that's about $19.95, but for a limited time, if you call and mention CanesInSight, the package will be $9.95. And so if you've been telling yourself, get your finances together, this is your chance to do it, and he's a fellow Cane. He's a guy that lives it, dies with it, just like we do. He's out there trying to do things, lifetime fan like the rest of us. So call, click the link in the show notes to book a call, and the 2026 planning and profit package is just your roadmap to be profitable. So.
Yeah, shout out to Cannata Financial and Sebastian. Real quick before I get back to the analysis, I had to post this because we should have probably done it in the earlier segment, but I just saw it and I had to pull it up. It's on CanesInsight.com. 7.7 million posts and counting. Sign up today if you haven't signed up for CanesInsight.com. But there are our friends, our old friends. They're celebrating the Georgia SEC championship game. Now watching Miami from home with their clown makeup on. So I had to share that one when I saw it on CanesInsight.com. 7.7 million posts and counting. Biggest Canes community on the planet. Sign up today. Over 3,000 on right now, baby. So like and subscribe to the show if you're new around here. We're doing this every day. We're doing 2 a day for probably the rest of the week because there's so much to talk about. Steve Kim coming on later. We'll do a show probably around 2 p.m. Eastern time with Steve Kim. But Lance, I know you have not had the chance to dive fully into the tape with the detail that you like to do because the game just happened yesterday. But Ole Miss Miami matchup is set now. Some initial thoughts. I know we talked earlier about some SMU tendencies when it comes to Ole Miss, not just in terms of pace, not just in terms of having a smaller dual threat quarterback that can make plays and is smart with the ball, how fast they get rid of it to neutralize the pass rush. A lot of little things like that. Probably better running game, certainly a better running game for Ole Miss than for SMU. But what do you see? Initial thoughts on this matchup? I know you're going to break it down in more detail.
Well, I mean, you're in the semifinals of the college football playoffs, right? You're going to play a good team no matter who you're playing. I'd be lying to you if in my heart of hearts I wasn't pulling for Ole Miss to win. Careful what you wish for, and a lot of times, right? But I just felt like Georgia is one of the few teams that can kind of, match some of that physicality and violence and competitive culture that Miami's starting to show a little bit. So I feel like Ole Miss is probably a matchup that Miami has a better chance to win than I would have against Georgia. That doesn't mean that I would have thought we'd lose to Georgia, but when you watch Ole Miss, you see they are exactly what you talked about, right? They're definitely that pace offense. Their quarterback was just absolutely on fire in the second half in that game. He really impressed me with some of the throws that he made late. Because early on, I was kind of like, this guy's a little scattershot, has a tendency to dirt the ball a little bit. Nice player, but runs around, makes a few plays. And then, of course, that second half, he was, like they even said it on the broadcast, right? He's like the old NBA Jam. He was just on fire, some of the throws that he was making there late were pretty awesome. Their receivers made some plays as well. The offensively, they're going to be a challenge, right? They bring a lot of things that are going to challenge Miami differently than what they've experienced, maybe in some of this 6-game run that they've had. But Marcel Reed is a similar type player, right? We had the wind in that game, which definitely impacted the passing ability, especially some of those vertical shots. They're going to be a good team from that respect. You got the coaching changeover thing. How does that play into things? It didn't last night, right? Where I felt like Ole Miss deserved to win that game. They really kind of controlled it, in my view. And early on, probably should have had a bigger lead than they did. And then Lacey puts the ball on the turf, and Georgia recovers that and brings it back for a touchdown, right? Which kind of changed the scope of that game just a little bit as well. I think up front, Ole Miss is impressive. They've got interior pressure, which is always difficult for quarterbacks, right? I feel like they're probably a little bit spicier inside than they are outside on the edges. They probably don't have the level of front that Georgia does and typically has, right? Their linebackers are just okay, in my opinion. Outside, you can throw the ball on them. I feel like you want to make them tackle in space a little bit. You saw that in this game, right? You saw several instances where the defensive backs failed to make tackles outside. Georgia was able to make some big plays, extend plays, just because of the fact that Ole Miss didn't tackle the best. It'll be interesting to see what kind of tweaks you see on film with their new coach. You get a comment in here. You kind of see careful Ole Miss is a better version of SMU. Again, they're good. Yeah. I mean, you got to pick one though, right? You get two choices. Would you rather play Georgia? Or rather play Ole Miss? In my heart, I'd rather play Ole Miss. Can Ole Miss beat us? Absolutely. Can Georgia beat us? Absolutely. But you got to choose one. And so in my heart, I would rather play Ole Miss than Georgia just because of the style that we're playing right now, the way that we're playing right now and the way that we set up. I believe also Georgia's got more talent than Ole Miss. And so when you kind of put all that together, that's what you decide. But make no mistake, even from an analytics standpoint, if you look at like what do they do from an EPA, what do they do from an adjusted EPA for their opponents, what do they do from EPA minus offense defense. Ole Miss is top 5 in all of those things, right? And Georgia is top 5 in all of those things. So no matter who you're going to play a good opponent. I'll look at them more. Their running back looked like he had a lot of heart. That Lacey kid looked like he had a lot of heart. Looked like he
talent too.
Yeah, he runs
fast. Played that game with a hurt shoulder. That catch that he made, where Chambliss was rolling out, and kind of hits him right at the sticks, right, and he just got absolutely popped by I think it was KJ Bolden. And hanging on to that ball, that was one of those impressive moments, right? Where, okay, that's a guy with real football character and real toughness to be able to kind of make that play and hold on to the ball. I know he had the fumble, and that'll be something you want to try and get, in this game as well, get some turnovers from him. But it's fun, guys. We're playing football in January. We're in the semifinals of the college football playoffs. One win away from playing for a national title, playing for number 6 at home. So, you're not going to get a lot of complaining from me. I know we had a comment earlier talking about, we feel invincible. Man, if you guys have one guest who's probably a fatalist, and isn't like a giant homer, against all the opponents and all those things, it's got to be me, right? I mean, I listen to y'all's show. I do not act invincible about Miami at all. In fact, sometimes it's a little bit of the opposite, right? I get like you got to like be a little more into
Listen,
it.
I've been called pessimistic Pete many times, so I don't know.
I love that.
But I have not picked against Miami, and I will say, Lance, yeah, you didn't seem too confident that Miami was going to win this game the other day, man.
I'll tell you what, man. The best thing to do is just keep your mouth shut. I never put a pick out there. There was never a pick against Miami that was posted or said or passed along in print. Did I expect to win? I don't know that I expected it, but I certainly felt like we had a chance. 55-45 is what I said, actually, right? And to me, that's a coin flip. That is one of those games that could go either way. Okay, the Scott interception doesn't happen. They score. That game can go either way, right? So in my mind, that's kind of what happened. But you're talking about the defending national champion with all that talent we talked about, and Miami trailed for 0 seconds, okay? Miami trailed for 0 seconds against Texas A&M. Miami trailed for 0 seconds against Notre Dame. Like at some point, our fan base, they got to like look at what's happening with this team against really good teams and look at how they're playing. Guys, they've trailed for 0 seconds against their 3 best opponents this year.
Top 10 opponents.
And we're talking like, you're acting invincible. You're acting this, you're doing that. They trailed for 0 seconds.
Love it. Love it. Real quick, I correct myself. I said Kewan Lacey ran a 10.9. Kewan Lacey ran a 10.49 meters. He is 210 pounds. He ran for 1,500 yards this year and counting, 23 touchdowns. I think we're going to talk about Trinidad Chambliss a lot this week. I really think their best player is number 5, Kewan Lacey. Not only like just making their whole offense go, but I think he's the best. And I'm not just saying this because of yesterday. I've been watching him all year. I think aside from Jeremiah Love, who's now gone, done with college football, I think the best running back in the country, period, is Lacey. Maud Hardy for Missouri is excellent. I know you watch him a lot, Lance, because you're out there in that part of the world. Kewan Lacey with the size, speed, he has good feet. You saw him get outside, get to the corner a ton yesterday, and he can finish his runs. He's big. He runs hard. I am a huge, huge believer in Kewan Lacey. I'm not going to say he's a first-round pick, but I could see him being like that Omarion Hampton, where when you get to draft time, you're like, wait a minute, this guy's 210 plus. He's productive back. He runs a 4.3, and he becomes a first-round pick. He's that kind of player, and I don't think he's getting talked about as much because of the Trinidad Chambliss factor, but he is really, really, really special in my view. But Lance, I think stopping him will allow you to have a much better success against Trinidad Chambliss. But I want to ask you this, Lance, because I didn't even realize this, and I'm sure you're going to watch this tape in the week to come. Maybe we'll bring you on after you do. But I had not considered this. Great point by our guy Fresh in the comments. He says, Carson Beck's had some tough matchups against Ole Miss. And then last year, this was his worst game against Ole Miss, 186 yards and INT, got sacked a bunch. They lost. Lane Kiffin talked a little trash about him too.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And with all the turnover we're seeing on Ole Miss on the offensive side of the ball, Pete Golding, he's not going anywhere. He's still the defensive coordinator. And I think that's a different team. Last year, they probably had more talent on defense last year. Really, they had more talent overall last year.
Yeah, agreed.
They had a ton of NFL guys. Kiffin kind of fumbled that one. But that defensive matchup against Carson Beck, I'm sure they're watching that film quite a bit themselves. You'll watch it. I won't ask you for specifics on it because you got to really break it down. But how do you like the fact that you have the same defensive coordinator going against Carson Beck? How do you see that whole thing playing out? Like, what do you see from the Carson Beck standpoint in this game?
Yeah, I think at the time that they played that game, Carson Beck was kind of going through, a similar stretch to what he was going through this year, right? Like, he didn't play well against Louisville. He didn't play well, especially well against SMU, right, in some of those games. I think there was a third game that we actually won where he didn't play the best as well. And during that stretch, that's a similar stretch that he had last year with the Ole Miss game and really the kind of time period that he had last year, which is, why he's here, quite honestly, because he probably goes in the draft if he doesn't have, that down stretch that he had there. You absolutely can get Carson Beck out of rhythm, especially if you pressure him a lot. That has tended to be whenever he has struggled, but you change the picture post snap on him, he's had a little bit of trouble. That's any quarterback. You pressure any quarterback, they're worse. And every single NFL stat shows you that. I do believe this year that every single quarterback has been worse from an EPA per standpoint than when pressured than when not at last check. So those are the best guys in the world doing it, right? With the best coaches in the world. So pressure guys, they're going to play worse. I know that Georgia went through a little trouble with their offensive line last year, in the middle of the year, where they were giving up a lot of pressure. They actually had a lot of talent on that offensive line. If you look at what they're doing in the NFL, both those guards are starting. Their center. They got all kinds of offensive linemen in the NFL. So
Stacey Searles effect. That's the Stacey Searles effect in action with how bad they played. By the way, they played bad yesterday too. I mean, you talk about Stockton getting smacked up with that interior pressure. But I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, Stockton played well. Honestly, he was a gamer as well. You can see why they like him. Probably his teammates gravitated towards him just the way that he played. Pretty similar to the way Beck played, quite honestly. So yeah, you're gonna see. Can Miami protect him first? If Miami can give him the time that they do, Beck in the last 6 games has kind of altered the way that he's attacking defenses, right? To me, against Louisville and SMU, he was definitely forcing the ball vertical, in my opinion, where it wasn't always there. On several of those interceptions, there were open guys, right, for the check down, and I felt like he forced it. I felt like once they got a little pressure on him, he also started to speed up his internal clock. So that's going to be one of the keys to the game. Can Ole Miss pressure Beck and get him to speed his internal clock up? Can Ole Miss stop the run too, right? Because again, you got to earn your right to rush the passer, and that was the key for me against Ohio State offensively, was the fact that Miami was able to stay in their base offense because they were able to run the ball. They were most of the time in 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. And that, offenses, when they live in those, they're going to be effective. They're going to hold on to the ball. Another area that, kind of mitigates some of those offenses that you're going to face, you possess the ball on the other side and you shorten the game a little bit and take away some of those opportunities that the offense on the other side has. So that's going to be one key there. The other is, can Daniels continue to play? Can Daniels continue to play the way that he's played in the last month? To where he's really been the go-to guy in some of those third down spots in several of our games down the stretch, even more so than Tony. And one of the things you love about Tony is, you haven't seen an ounce of drop off in effort from him, right? When the play's not going to him and he knows it's not going to him, he's putting his soul on the line to like block guys out there. And you just love that. You love the way they celebrate after the fact. To me, you can see football character on film. I talk about it when I do my write-ups. You talk about the way that you see things happening between plays and after plays. And this team plays for each other. They play for the man next to each other so often on film. And I love seeing that. That's something that, coaches, they talk about all the time, right? Play for the man next to you. And you see that with this team. So that's going to be something that, can Ole Miss do that? Ole Miss is absolutely going to do the modern defenses, the sim pressures, right, where they're going to try, and overload, or they're going to mug up gaps, or they're going to, try and get pressures to open sides with creepers and drop guys out. You saw that a lot last night. In fact, you saw Ole Miss try and drop guys. You saw them loop and stunt, and I actually don't know his name, but the big guy for Ole Miss that kind of like had the ball hit him in the face mask, that kid impressed you. He's good. Yeah. He's good. And so, they ran a lot of stunts in games trying to get him open or get him in the face of Stockton. And they had a lot of success doing that, down the stretch. I imagine they'll continue to try and employ similar things against Miami, because Miami and Georgia do similar things on both sides of the ball, really. Whenever I previewed Heatherman, I talked about Kirby Smart quite a bit in that piece, because there's so much influence on what Heatherman's doing from what Kirby Smart, is kind of famous for with his mint and tight fronts. And so you're going to be able to see a lot of similarities between the two teams. I think that might provide opportunities for both sides of coaches to see some things, that worked with similarities on what each team does.
Lance, you're the man. Go to work. I know you're going to be in the lab studying. We'll hopefully bring you back here before the semifinal in the Fiesta Bowl.
I want to touch on one thing before I leave. Y'all beat me up pretty good last week. I told you I was going to come on with the emblem on.
No more scarlet shirts.
Yeah, there's no debating the color. There's no debating what's
guy's
going on.
Gonna show up with a powder blue shirt on his next appearance, man, before we play Ole Miss.
I thought about it. I thought about trolling y'all just a little bit and having some fun with it. But I told you I'd put on the U shirt this week, so I did. Nobody even calls me out on that. Now, last week, y'all couldn't stop.
Because listen, you fell in line, man. You did what you had to do.
You bullied me into the U shirt, right?
I don't know, man. You had a nice reverse jinx last time, so maybe I would rather you come on wearing one of those like old Dixie shirts, or something like that, with the blue and red to get at least the jinx going. But man, listen, we appreciate you. Go to work. We got a lot more to talk about here, and not firing coaches. Usually this time of year, Lance, you're doing your new coach breakdown or coach candidate breakdown. So I'm glad you're not doing that one this time of year. You're the man. We appreciate you. Lance Rofford, as always, brought to you by Cannata Financial. Be good.
Take care, guys.
Man, Glance, the splicer. He's got more
catchphrases. The glancer, like you said, the splicer. Oh man.
Pete, now we got to talk about our favorite thing in the world, which is the transfer portal. Before we do that, our transfer portal coverage is brought to you by KashKick, KashKick in the App Store. One of the biggest apps in the country, 4.5 plus average rating, 1.5 million downloads. Very simple. Go to KashKick in the App Store, KashKick. Download the app. You're already playing video games on your phone, those little fun games to pass the time. Maybe you're browsing, maybe you're doing surveys, sharing your opinion. But what if that time earned you real money? Give your free time a raise with KashKick, KashKick. You download the app, do all those things, play the games. They're consolidated right there on the app, browse, do surveys, and money goes into your account, your PayPal. It's that simple. It's not going to change your job, but it's going to give you some extra money on the side just for spending your free time having fun playing games. Sounds too good to be true, but it's the real deal. KashKick, KashKick, one of the biggest apps in the country. Download today, KashKick. And also, I know you'll probably be stopping by there. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you've probably already been there a couple times since the game and the big win against Ohio State. That is Duffy's Tavern right there on the edge of Coral Gables. Look at these pictures, man. What a spot. What an iconic spot. I love the chandelier with the liquor bottles. Duffy's Tavern, edge of Coral Gables, heart of Miami, 60-plus years serving the community, now accepting credit cards. All the playoff games were popping there. All the NFL playoff games are going to be popping there. If you can't make it to the desert, you know there's going to be a big-time watch party at Duffy's Tavern with the giant TV outside and all the TVs inside. Last few watch parties have been rocking and rolling. So you want to enjoy football as it's meant to be watched, eating the menu classics that have satisfied Miami for 60-plus years, plus new additions just to get with the times. Duffy's Tavern, they got the green beer right there, the home of the Hurricanes. You've been there a couple of times, right, since the big win, Big Pete?
I have not.
That's a shocker. That's a shocker. Well, maybe when I get back from the desert, we'll meet back up there. But it's going to be a lot of fun, man. Portal. Let's get into it, Pete, because and go ahead and get these departure tweets ready, because Miami did lose a couple of names in the portal. It's a two-way street. You get talent in. Sometimes you get talent out. When you recruit a lot of four-star talent like Miami, sometimes that four-star talent decides to move on, especially if they're not playing, maybe injuries. And I think with these two guys we're about to talk about, injuries did play a role, Pete, but we did lose a couple of talented skill position players to the transfer portal. So I'll let you start with whoever you want to start with here.
Yeah, we'll start with Brock Schott here. And, for those of you on the Discord, I posted about this it was the 26th of December. So this is, this is something that it's not like he didn't travel with the team. This decision, he had already left the team prior to these Ohio State practices. So he was not with the team in the lead up to that game. And, D, we were a big fan of this guy's skill set in terms of the physicals that he brought to the table. We saw him playing both sides of the ball in high school. Guy that was wanted by Notre Dame very badly. Height, weight, speed, sort of deal was really great with him. I think you mentioned the injury that happened, and that definitely set him back mid-season. There was some drop stuff in fall with him. I mean, I think that he probably led the team in drops during the fall. There was a lot of questions on him. Why wasn't Miami getting Brock Schott more involved? We saw him play in that game against Bethune-Cookman and get some time there. But I think it was the confidence there was not really where it needed to be after camp. And then he gets the injury, which set him back more. So unfortunate, talented player. You don't like to lose these guys. I think he'll be, has a chance to be a really good player, at his next stop. But I think he kind of sees, look, Miami's bringing in some other guys here. I'm not in a great maybe frame of mind after this injury situation this year. And, tough one to see move on, but this is the day and age that we're in now.
Yeah, talented player that we both liked. I've interacted with the family, great people, and everything I've heard from him, hardworking, right? Weight room beast, really wanted to make this work. I think injury, which happened later in the year, that slowed him down. I think also, Notre Dame recruited him as a linebacker, right? Some teams liked him on defense. He played everywhere in high school, I think, and that's in the Fort Wayne area, was the best player on the field most of the time. And I think in terms of catch and run, great. That's easy. You saw that in some of the games that he played and in practice. Throw him a quick pass, let him run. That's what he does. He's fast, he's tough, and all those things. I think running routes, right? Catching the ball, being quarterback friendly, things that happen when you're playing like high level 7-on-7 all off season. Sometimes, the receiving skills tend to improve in that way, or just playing in a more advanced high school setting where you're playing again, if you're down here in South Florida or some of these big time Texas schools or wherever, and you're playing against great defensive backs all the time, great, linebackers that can run and move, you get some of that ability. I think that was more of a developmental thing with Schott. So I could see why some people wanted him on defense. I do think he has talent to play offense. It's just the receiving part of it beyond the catch and run and the speed, which he already had. I think that part took a little bit longer than it may have with other players like an Arroyo. He came in as a great receiver in high school. Will Mallory, Brevin Jordan, those guys, they knew how to play receiver, be a receiving tight end right away with the routes and hands catching and catching in traffic and finding soft spots, all that kind of stuff, where I think with Shot, it was much more of a raw athletic package, a tough football player package, but not necessarily the polished receiver coming in that would lead to immediate playing time. When a guy's a 4-star player coming from Fort Wayne, Indiana, doesn't play right away, a lot of times you see those kind of players move on because they're just, they're out of their element. They want to maybe go back home or go somewhere else. I don't know where Brock Shot would go, but he is a talented player, and I think he's going to be good for somebody. I'm watching to see if he's going to play defense or offense, because that to me is an interesting choice that he'll have to make, but a guy that we really like and I think has a chance to be very successful. But this is just like you said, Pete. This is what happens when you recruit big-time players, by the way. And you know this, Pete. When you ask people around Miami what position group in the class you're most excited about, meaning the class of 2026 that just signed, a lot of people will say tight end very early in that process. So, tight end is something that there's going to be young talent there. Of course, Luka Gilbert already doing some nice things as a true freshman in practice and limited times in games.
And it's a strange position. We see it all the time. A guy like Elijah Arroyo, he had injury issues. He had his best season before the year before that he broke out in. I mean, he had like 11 catches, right? It's not like he was a household name. And sometimes guys have to work through certain things. I think he can be a good one. Hopefully he lands somewhere where he has an opportunity to gain some confidence and be, a features sort of guy. I think he doesn't need to go to a Notre Dame or Ohio State right now.
But Indiana,
Indiana
maybe
would be good. Yeah.
His home state, they'll develop him. That'll be interesting to watch. But yeah, I agree with you, Pete. It's not about and this is true for a lot of these portal guys. It's not just about going to, hey, you're in one logo, you go to another logo, right? You're in Miami, you go to Georgia, like a Jaden Harris or someone like that. I mean, it's no point in going to the big logo if you're not playing and develop. So I think playing time development really is the key with Brock Shot going forward. But player work we were excited about. I think he's going to still have a good career, but I think Miami will be good in terms of young dynamic tight ends between Luka Gilbert, who they already have. Lofton, you see him starting to come on. He's going to help you more now in that role. And then also, of course, Izzy Briggs from California, Gavin Mueller from Chicago, two guys with tremendous athletic ability that they're very excited about. So good luck to Brock Shot. Always good dealing with his people, and hope he has a lot of success.
Next guy here, another one that we were, very excited about. And I saw you talked about this for a few minutes yesterday. Dante Simpson, Miami defensive line, has been a guy that, again, was a really good evaluation. I thought coming out of high school, we were both fans of his and played early on here. Now, I will say, D, I heard you blaming representation and agents yesterday. As someone who has obviously been around and been in the business, like, I will say, I don't know the situation here, but at a certain point we have to start to look at the players, because I've been in situations where you advise guys to do certain things and they don't want to hear it. So the player, I think, has to have a little patience from what I'm hearing to understand, hey, you may not be the down in, down out guy right now. You have to play a certain role here and wait your turn. And this is not a good one to lose, man, for depth's sakes moving forward. Right now, does he think he should be maybe, and again, I'm speculating here, but does a guy like this think that, hey, maybe I should be paid next year like a starter when I see that you're going to lose a guy like David Blay? Moten looks like he might be coming back here, which would be an awesome thing for the D-line. So I think it's kind of like, I know Justin Scott's coming back. I know a couple guys who are pretty much cemented as starters in front of me are coming back here. What's my path to play? Instead of trusting the vision, like we've seen, in Armando Blunt, for example, trusted when he came in last year and wasn't in, and was getting in the mix, but wasn't playing all that much, needed his time to develop. I don't always want to just throw these agents under the bus. I'll just say that, D. I think at a certain point, the agent, the player is the guy picking the guy representing him.
So, no doubt.
I just want to put that out there.
And I don't know the situation. By the way, shout out to George Blissett in the chat, man. We're gonna miss you guys. But yeah, with Simpson, I don't know the exact, like, the individuals and the exact situation there. And I wasn't just saying the agent; it could also be the family, right? Or the people or friends of the family, right? That's, there's a lot of people giving advice to the young man, right? Who is 18 years old making multi-million-dollar decisions. That's tough. I mean, he's a legal adult, but these are big money decisions with a lot of people pulling in different directions. So I focus when there's a decision made, which I find to be a poor decision, and people are like, oh, you're being a homer. I didn't say that, Brock Shaw's decision was necessarily poor. Portal is a great thing for a lot of players, guys that go to the NFL at their new spot, right? Sometimes guys go from bigger schools to smaller schools and make the NFL. So it's not about the portal being a bad decision just because Miami's doing well right now. But in Donta Simpson's case, this is a guy that was playing already and was going to play and plays a position that has been developed with players exactly like him. And by the way, he's not a finished product by any means. He needs a lot of development. But Ron Moten, who is the closest parallel you could say to him as a Broward guy, 3-star guy that really developed into an NFL player, we saw what happened with him. You've seen Justin Scott go from someone who in August, Pete, you're talking to the same people I'm talking to. Justin Scott in August, it was not like people were penciling him to be a star. It was, hey, he's still young.
Needed to wake up, and he has. That's the beauty of a long season.
And he's like I don't want to get too far ahead of it because he still has time to go. But if he continues on his current trajectory, he's a shaking hands with Roger Goodell guy, Justin Scott. And that was not like a foregone conclusion. So these guys are getting developed. And I think if you're Donta Simpson, you had a clear path to development, a clear path to playing time. But from what I understand, people around are saying, hey, you should be starting right now. I think On3 had him as a true freshman All-America preseason, if I recall. So when you find yourself on a true freshman All-America list as a kid, your eyes get big and you say, man, I'm going to be playing every down, right? I'm going to be the man. I'm going to be like Malachi Tony or Bryce Fitzgerald. And it's not that always the case, especially at that spot. And look, I take some blame, right? Because we hype these kids up too, because we get excited. That's our job, is when they're showing flashes. We tell you all they're showing flashes. It was true when it comes to Donta Simpson. He was showing flashes, but that doesn't mean you play and start right away. Shout out to Steve-O in the comments. It doesn't mean that you play right away. So I don't think it was a very good decision. We've seen some guys jump in the portal and jump back to their school. We saw it with Nikar last year for Miami. We've seen it with other players across the country. Jabril Walls just went back to FSU. I hope that's a situation here because I think it will be good for us. I think it'll really good for him. It'll be good for everybody. But if he's gone, you got to replace that because he was someone you were penciling in, not necessarily as the next Cortez Kennedy, but as someone who's going to be part of what you were doing. And he plays a position that is hard to find. So Keyshawn Stansel, someone like that can benefit as far as a young player, but you may need some older player as well through the portal to help out Moten if he comes back. Justin Scott, Armando Blunt, who's really on a upward trajectory. You need more there. And I think Simpson had a spot there. You may need to fill it with someone else with his departure.
Without a doubt. And we're going to continue to talk portal here, D. We got
one more departure we got to talk about. Another 4-star departure, Pete. And this is someone who we got so many questions about him during the offseason, man. Yeah. I thought this was somebody like he was more popular than Tom Cruise with, how many questions we got about this dude. But Chance Robinson enters the portal. And by the way, first of all, very classy on his departure. All his comments were extremely positive, nothing negative, no upside down U's, no middle fingers. He said, hey, man, my dream was to be a Cane. Didn't work out. I'm forever a Cane, though. I went here, and now I'm going to go on to somewhere else. So shout out to him and his family to tell he was raised right. But I like Chance Robinson, man. He was making a lot of plays in camp. It was really just injuries, I think, set him behind the 8 ball. And he needs a fresh start. He has a lot of talent, big possession receiver that can deceptively get open, has good hands. I would love to see him go somewhere and have a lot of success, not just because he was classy and has always been classy. His mother dealing with her, very successful young woman and just someone who you could tell has raised him right. I think this guy's good. I think he should go P4.
SMU?
P4, maybe. P4 with a chance to play. But wherever he goes, I hope he goes somewhere he can play and he can get the football because
USF maybe with Heartline.
Yeah.
They're gonna want to throw the ball.
That's a great one, Pete. It's great when you get developed. St. Thomas Aquinas connection. I know Heartline's recruited that school and has recruited all those Broward private schools quite a bit. That's a great one by UP. But I think in general, that class of 24 receiving, right? You had Chance, you had Nightcar, you had JoJo. Two of those, all 4 stars. 2 of those guys already in the portal. JoJo had a catch against Ohio State. Not playing maybe the role you envisioned out of spring for him. Another guy dealt with injuries. But that is a factor, and maybe a factor.
I give him a ton of credit, man, for staying engaged. I really do. 100%. And I mean, he moved the chains. He got a first down.
100%. And look, we treat him like, hey, you got to be Malachi Tony. You got to be Jeremiah Smith. You got to be the man right away. He's still a true sophomore. And he was a DB for a lot of times in high school, more of an athlete, I think, than a pure receiver in high school. There's still a lot of developmental upside with the JoJo Trader. By the way, that's 365 Canes football. Our guy Steve-O says, keep a lookout for the Miami Ohio State film review dropping on CIS later today. We'll post that on socials and on CanesInSight, 7.7 million post and counting. But yeah, so that class of 24 kind of got jumped a little bit by the class of 25. When you talk about Malachi Tony, Josh Moore, Dalen Upshaw, who's now hurt. You brought in a tremendous wide receiver class with Samorian Wingo, who's already here making plays. By the way, I heard he's impressive. I don't know if you've heard anything on Samorian Wingo. Pete,
yeah, I told you when I was at the practice, he looks real good.
Yeah, that's right. You were out there. And I've heard that from others as well. Van Spafford, his speed, route running, he's going to be a factor. Maylon Parrish, one of the highest risers in senior season, 4-star player. Tyron Evans. So you got a lot of guys coming in. 25 guys are making a move. Those 24 players felt the pressure. And again, I don't say this, I don't think they're running from competition. I think they're running towards opportunity. And I think Robinson and Carr, I support their decisions to go. I think they're doing the right things. I mean, it's for whatever they do, it's their lives. But I mean, I think they're doing the right thing. And I think this is not them foregoing the opportunity to be great and go to the NFL. I think they had that ability. They just got to find it somewhere else.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And again, we're rooting for these guys. Hopefully we don't have a future segment like we're talking about the Georgia guys.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't see it with these guys. I mean, I didn't see it with those guys either, really, but I definitely don't see it with these guys. So before we continue getting into, because we got some more guys out there to talk about with the portal officially open today, I wanted to shout out Lomelo's Meat Market, fresh Wagyu beef delivered to your door if you're local here in Miami, 9810 South Dixie Highway. This is what I was eating on New Year's Eve there, celebrating the Canes win. Lomelos.com, promo code CIS10 for 10% off your order. This is what Mario gifted the entire staff, man. So, this is what the recruits are eating. This is what the portal guys, if they're here for visits, probably going to be eating as well when Mario hosts them at his house. See that beautiful tomahawk on the grill there. If you mention CanesInSight in store, you get a free pack of Wagyu burgers. So check them out, Lomelos.com. By the way, for shouting out kind of Hispanic-owned classic restaurants in Miami, Florida, and food providers, we got to shout out Islas Canarias, Cuban Express. No better way to ring in the new year. I know your resolution was to eat more Cuban food, a lot of people. So there, you got it right here. 7 different types of croquetas, the sandwiches. If you do have a healthy New Year's resolution, they got salads as well, but so much to offer. New stuff, old stuff, traditional. Since 1977, they've been serving the Miami community. The best Cuban restaurant on the planet, and that new location in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion is popping. It is the spot, and I know a lot of people work in that area, kind of just grab and go. Islas Canarias, Cuban Express will take care of you and get you whatever you need, man. Pull the menu up right here. You got the sweets, you got the tequeños, which are actually Venezuelan, but you can grab those, the empanadas, the coffees. So you hear Mario and all these announcers, they always like to talk about Cuban coffee and make the same joke. Well, you try it for yourself at Islas Canarias, Cuban Express.
So,
and also, Pete, real quick, before we get to the portal, I want to shout, Mo's been patient. I want to shout out his super chats because he's got to talk his smack. Mo, one of our best supporters, fans, always bringing the chat energy and positivity. Where are those Ohio State fans now? They are missing, by the way. Where's our guy? He's been missing in action. Our boy from
Go Jay,
man, where you at?
He said, "Listen, I said it on the post game show, man. I want my servicemen to be men of valor, men of honor." He said he was going to come back here. He better be back here this week. He said he was, man.
Seriously, man. Come on, let's get back here. But yeah, Mark Fletcher, Derrick Henry 2.0 from Mo Hussein. Listen, I don't know, Derrick Henry, that's a tough bar to set, but he's definitely, I think, escalating his national brand, right? When you talk best running backs in the country right now across, any national platform, Mark Fletcher's name is going to come up. And there he says, extend Mario. Where are those Ohio State fans? I love it. Extend Mario. We were with Mario's agent in the team hotel. Obviously, he's a pro. He wasn't talking specifics or anything. Really didn't say anything. He was just kind of smiling, and we were all saying like, "Hey, man, you're gonna be very, very lucky." And he just kind of smiled. He didn't.
I heard that thing could be done very soon here, D. I'll be the one that says it. I heard that thing could be done very soon here. So
appreciate you, Canes, on top with the Scorpion. Any of these offenses or defenses left a Scorpion? Pete, have you done a Scorpion analysis? I know you have the snake analysis. I don't know if your insects are.
I don't know much about the Scorpion. Are those desert?
Yeah, they are desert. Actually, we might see some out here in Arizona when we get out there. Right now, I'm halfway there. I'm in the great state of Texas.
Wait, are you staying out there all week?
No, I think I'm coming back, and then we go right back. So
got it.
We're on tour, baby, with CanesInSight. But now that we got the good internet, we'll be doing shows. Man, I'll be ripping these things off nonstop because of the portal. And I want to talk about the portal here, the national portal. We're in the 1 hour, 40-minute mark. I could probably go 7 hours, but we'll save you guys that. But we're going to be doing this a lot during portal season, which is last year we actually had 2 separate channels working at the same time with Group Chat Sports, CanesInSight, and we talked a lot about national portal there. We got 3,700 people on. I think it makes some more sense for us to talk a lot of that portal stuff here on this show. And some of it's going to be national. It's not necessarily going to touch on Miami. Some of it will. But one thing I learned following the portal every day and all the Trinidad Chandlers, again, Ole Miss's backup quarterback. We did a video on that. And now look how big that's playing out here nationally. I think the best way to know about college football in 2026 as a fan is to study the portal in January. Now there's only one portal period, so you only do it for one. But studying the portal in January, Pete, I know you'll agree because every time a guy pops off, we send ourselves a Hardy for Missouri. We did a video on him before. All these guys, we always text each other man, remember this video? Remember that? Because when you study the portal movement now, it will tell you who is going to be playing deep into December and January. Indiana, we did a ton of videos on those guys and what they were doing in the portal. Oregon, it wasn't a lot of volume, but it was very focused and successful. You saw Dylan Thieneman, what he did. Texas Tech and all those schools, obviously. But Ole Miss, they did a ton. So portal is the key. Portal is the name of the game right now in college football. You can like it or hate it, but it's the best thing going. So you better learn to love it. And yeah, like and subscribe, by the way, over 3,700 people on. But yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit of a change. We got some branding stuff on the way. You'll be seeing in the new year. Pete's been working hard on a lot of things. But we're going to be spending, I think, the end of these shows really drilling down what's happening nationally in the portal. As the portal officially opens today. You're not seeing a lot of commitments yet, but you are seeing a lot of movement.
I got to say, D, I'm bringing up a comment here from Grandpa Jim.
Our boy,
who his grandson, Riley Williams, is back in the portal. We're going to be talking a lot about portal guys, man, but that could be an interesting reunion there.
We've talked about it. We one area where I think this team took a lot of steps forward. Obviously, look where they're at right now instead of the Pop-Tarts Bowl. The one area where I do think this team took a step back is just having that length and size at tight end, particularly the depth at tight end where you have just a lot of long, powerful players like a Riley Williams, a Cam McCormick, who really helped you in your blocking game. That's why the running game, I think, was more, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why the running game was more explosive last year than it was this year is that tight end blocking game on the edge. So yeah, I think Riley Williams would make a lot of sense as a fit. Just in general, I think big blocking tight ends, they're not sexy. People don't get excited about them, but people always talk bad about Cam McCormick, who I never understood why. The guy was a true Cane, but look at the impact he had on the running game, right? There's a reason why the good teams in the NFL and the good teams in college use so many of these blocking tight ends. They make a difference. They're matchup problems, and they change the numbers in your favor when they can block and really seal that edge. So We'll see.
So I'll say this, Di, and I posted this on the Discord last night. Obviously, the portal's open now officially. So starting today, they could have guys on campus. I'm hearing there's not going to be any visits today, from what I understand. At least as of last night, there was nothing lined up. Maybe someone comes in tonight, but from what the staff is preparing for, you're most likely, because you're in a weird spot with these games, you know, with still having to coach these games up and prepare, and then you're leaving. I think Monday they leave, right? So the plan right now is potentially posting players Saturday to Sunday. So tomorrow, so we'll be hearing some stuff probably leak out today. Probably hosting guys tomorrow through Sunday, and then Sunday through Monday as well before the team gets out of here.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting, and we'll see those names start to pop up as the portal officially opens. I think we're
and sorry to cut you off, but I heard it's not out of the possibility that some staffers stay back in Miami during game week because they may need to host a handful of visits during the week. Yeah, now that's not the same. That would not be, you know, it's not great that you aren't there with your position coach, but these portal visits are different. I've mentioned it before. These are not, they're going to see the campus, they'll see the city a little bit, but it's not the same full official visit, song and dance. These a lot of times are negotiations, sitting down at the table and negotiating.
Yeah, these are grown-ups, right? So, you know, they know what they're doing. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens, because it's like we had the early start on the portal last time, right, where you had the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Now the prep work has been done, but different priorities, trying to win the 6th national championship for this program. So I'm sure, and you also have only one portal period instead of 2. So it's going to be a crazy 2 weeks, month for the Miami Hurricane staff. They're going to have to do things like you're talking about that are different maybe, but you have to do because of the importance of what's happening.
I'm hearing D, and you, this may be something that, you know, you confirm here or disagree with, but I think the number that they had in their head a few weeks ago in terms of what they were going to go get in the portal is decreasing. I think you've had more guys that have stayed, and I'm sure there's still going to be some more portal entries here, but you've had more guys who have stuck around, and I think they're feeling better about moving forward than maybe they previously envisioned.
Agreed. And I think it's even more like an Oregon last year, which was also a highly ranked portal class, because they signed like top guys like Thieneman, you know, guys. Isaiah World at that time was a highly ranked guy. I don't know if he's played that way, but he was a highly ranked player in the portals.
Got beat by, I saw him, I mean, they won, but he got beat by Bailey pretty badly the other day, or Height, excuse me, a couple times. So
yeah, I mean, if Isaiah World got paid what he got paid, and Markel Bell might be the Sultan of Brunei level money when this thing's all said and done, because he's so much better than Isaiah World. But the style of recruiting that Oregon did, it was focused, limited, but the expensive part of the supermarket, right? It was the top shelf liquor. It wasn't.
They were shopping at Lomello's, man. They were shopping for the good stuff. Although then you get your promo code, you get a 10% discount there.
Yeah, the marbling, but 100%. Look, we're talking about big time players. One name that is very, very interesting that just entered the portal, somewhat surprisingly, I hadn't heard a lot of buzz about him doing it. Coy Parrish, the safety for Minnesota. He was a freshman All-America last year. He's from small town, I believe in Minnesota. He's from the Midwest. 5 interceptions as a true freshman, as a freshman All-America. This year, less interceptions, but 82 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 1 sack. You think about Thieneman last year, who was another Michigan guy that entered the portal, goes to Dylan Thieneman. Oh, sorry, it's Minnesota, is Coy Parrish. So he is from Minnesota, so small time Minnesota. So he enters the portal. You saw Dylan Thieneman do it last year, going to Oregon. I'm sure Parrish saw that and said, hey, I want some of that. Corey Heatherman, Miami's defensive coordinator, coached both those guys. Wasn't able to get Thieneman. He goes to Oregon. But I think Parrish, Miami could potentially be more in the mix. I've been very hands-off in terms of really pushing for the info. I'm going to get a lot of portal info this week. I just wanted to kind of let the dust settle from trying to beat Ohio State. But I'm going to dig into some of this stuff.
Well, tampering's not a thing now. Now the portal's open. So portal's
open. So I'll find out about Parrish. But Minnesota has speculated, meaning their staff writers, their insiders have speculated. He could come back to Minnesota. He could go to Ohio State, which was involved with him in the recruiting process. Or he could go to Miami with Corey Heatherman. This is what they're saying. Safety is not necessarily what I thought Miami would be focused on in the portal necessarily. With Bryce Fitzgerald playing the way he is, Zechariah Poyser coming back, he has some young guys, Dylan Day, etc. But I do think we want impact players. Like, we want impactful players, difference-making players. He would fit that bill. Ohio State did this with Caleb Downs at safety. We saw the impact he had on their team, their national championship. He's one of their best players. That was a similar situation, I think, to Coy Parrish. So maybe you get, if you do invest and pursue this, and there's traction here, maybe you get Poyser and Parrish as your safeties, and Bryce Fitzgerald is now your nickel. You kind of play it like you played it when Keontae Scott was out. Bryce Fitzgerald got a ton of snaps at that time. You also had Poyser working. You had Jacoby Thomas working. So maybe you see more of a setup like that. That would be something I think could be interesting. But this would, if Miami does go in this direction and pursue the Heatherman connection, I do think it would be about getting an impactful player more so than necessarily need. I don't know your thoughts on Coy Parrish.
You got a chance to get a guy like that with the Heatherman connection, right? You take him. It's like the NFL draft. Like, certain players, like you may already be strong on a spot, but if it's the best player available, like that you really know is that much of a difference maker, you get him and figure out how to work him in the mix. And that's how I feel about this one, right? I think he's that sort of player potentially. I love Poyser. People know what we feel about Bryce Fitzgerald, but I like versatile playmakers, and he's that.
Exactly. Just players, not plays. And look, maybe Parrish plays the nickel a little bit, right? I would say, look at our defense, which, by the way, we were playing great defense at this time. When we had Fitzgerald, Thomas, and Poyser, we did not have Keontae Scott, who we all know is maybe the best defensive back in America, period. Didn't have him, and we didn't have much of a drop-off in our pass defense at that time. And we moved guys around. So I think that's more what you'd be looking at if you do add a Coy Parrish. But the guy's just such a good player, and Heatherman knows what to do with him and all the different things he can do. He had his best season under Heatherman. That would be my selling point if I'm Corey Heatherman. I'm saying, look, you had a fine season this year. You're still a stud, but you were really, really good as a freshman, and I can get you back to that. We had 5 interceptions. That would be kind of my selling point if I'm Coach Heatherman, but we'll see how this one plays out.
And you also imagine you're a guy like him who patrols the back end there. You got to think. We talk about Miami's O-line, if you're a QB, how good that is to play behind. Imagine being a guy at his position, and the defensive line is gonna get to the quarterback, and you're gonna have a whole different situation here without Bain and Mesidor, which we'll get to D-line in a second. I have some names to discuss here, but that's got to be a fun idea for a guy like him.
No doubt about it. And of course, Miami's playing, right? I mean, let's cut to the chase. This is not Pop-Tart Bowl, get us to the playoffs. We're in the playoffs. Tune in on Thursday. You'll see the Miami Hurricanes. You'll see our defense making plays. You're going to see Bryce Fitzgerald, freshman All-America. You're going to see Keontae Scott taking everything to the house. You're going to see Jacoby Thomas making all sorts of plays, including the game-clinching interception against Ohio State, Zechariah Poyser. So proof's in the pudding, not just because of what Heatherman did in Minnesota, but what Heatherman's done at Miami and what Miami's done as a program. So I think Miami's got a ton to sell. Really, with this one, I think it's more about how much does Miami pursue. The player is the player. They got their own needs, which we'll talk about here in a second. But interesting name to keep an eye on with Coy Parrish. Big-time player entering the portal. And early word out of Minnesota is return to Minnesota, Miami, or Ohio State. We'll watch how this one develops. But
I had D-line, D. We talk about D-line. And again, would imagine you're going to start to hear some reports of guys visiting here the next couple of days. That comes out today because they're in there working. Listen, as soon as they landed yesterday afternoon, the staff had a portal meeting yesterday afternoon. So they landed, went straight to the office, right? And obviously they're game planning, but obviously the recruiting department has their own work to do. And I'm going to mention a few names here on the D-line that I know Miami has a ton of interest in. I'm not sure what that communication has looked like at this point, but We'll start with Sahir West, James Madison, defensive lineman, who was a redshirt freshman this year, first team freshman All-American. And he's someone who he's originally from Baltimore, 6'3", 270, 275, has some versatility to play inside, outside, but really is that 3 tech that I think Corey Heatherman really loves. Again, you're going to probably bring back Moten here, Justin Scott as well. So you have a nice couple guys right there, and then some of the young guys that you expect to be difference makers. But Sahir West is someone that they would certainly like. Of course, JMU's coach Chesney is headed to UCLA, so you have to think they are going to be involved there and would pay a premium for a defensive lineman of his caliber. But I have to think the idea of getting a guy potentially for a few years is a good one if you're Miami.
Yeah, Baltimore native too. So he was local for James Madison, not local in UCLA, and is just a city guy, right? I think I always like recruiting guys from cities, not because they're better players or worse players. Country guys are pretty good at football too, but just because they fit, right? They like cities, they know cities. It's different type of kid a lot of times. So I think that's a good thing. 6'4", 270, 7 sacks, best player in that conference championship game by far. You mentioned the multiple years of eligibility, freshman of the year. We've seen how important defensive ends are to the system, man. I mean, that is why Miami's here. There's a lot of reasons why Miami's here, but if you ask me like, hey, what's the number one reason? There's a lot of options. The number one reason why Miami's where they are, I'd have to start with Dana Messidor. I don't know where else you start. And you lose both guys. So we have talent there. Hayden Lowe, 5-star player, who we both like, who would have played a lot this year if he didn't get hurt. I think he is going to be an outstanding piece of the puzzle next year. Marquise Lightfoot really developing as, an impactful pass rusher at the highest levels. You saw that game against Ohio State. He was difference maker against Texas A&M too. On a per snap basis, he's up there, man. He's balling. So you got him. Herbert Scroggins played a lot against Ohio State too. I saw him in some key drives down the stretch.
Yeah, I mentioned he was in there late.
Yeah, so a lot of good young players. Some more added this year. Guys we haven't even talked about.
But it's still position of grown men, right? So I'm excited about who you have coming in here, but I think a lot of those are developmental types, and some of them will be further along in the process than others when they get here, D. But I'm also not counting on them to be the year one difference makers at a position that's very, very tough to have year one. Justin Scott was a top 5 recruit in the country. Doesn't get much better than that with his physical skill set, and he needed a year to get stronger and put some weight on. Jaden Woods from Florida, D, that's another name that I would keep an eye on, someone that Miami recruited, and we've been mentioning him for a long time now.
Physical freak. He beat Francis pretty badly on a play with just like pure power too, which Francis doesn't get beat with power. And I mentioned the link there. I put this on the Discord last week. Very big tie there. Derek Wingo, former Florida defensive end, recently stopped playing like last year, was a guy who played at St. Thomas Aquinas. He is his agent. He is Jaden Wood's agent, who was Derek Wingo's coach in high school, Jason Taylor. So I'm not saying that makes anything a done deal or whatever, but you have to think there's an open line of communication there. I posted last week when he first hit the portal, I was hearing Texas was an early favorite for him. I think that's also coming out from the Florida side as well. Florida thought they could maybe keep him even though he was entering. So Texas is one to watch. I will say, it seems like every player who hits the portal now, every high-profile name, Isaac Brown hit it. Yeah, he's going to Texas. Jaden Ball hit it. Oh, he's going to Texas. Cam Coleman, it looks like he's already visiting Texas today. We understand Texas is going to have more money than just about anybody. But I have a hard time thinking they're going to land all these guys that they're being mentioned for, who are all going to be very expensive players. So we'll see. We'll see what happens there. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, there's a lot of high-priced players in the portal. And I think that's good because that just means teams spend their money. Florida State, by the way, is spending their money on their own players who extorted them for more money. You saw Jabril Rawls, their nickel, probably their best player last year. He jumps in the portal, comes back to Florida State. Ashton Baker, their safety, who had a pretty good year for him, has just announced that he's going back to Florida State. He had jumped in the portal. Now he's going back to Florida State. You know those guys got big raises. You know those guys got big raises.
And I got another name for you, D, that that I heard this morning. ACC guy. We haven't mentioned him on this show. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, so I'm just going to call him Stephen Green from Clemson. A guy who only had a couple. He had 2.5 sacks this season. 18 tackles. But body type wise, Miami would love to add this guy. I mean, he's 6'4", 290 is what he's listed at D tackle. But another guy with a lot of length, a lot of versatility across that defensive line.
They wanted him to stay. Clemson did. He was not like a washout, try to find a better spot somewhere. This is a big, talented guy. Texas A&M, I think, has some buzz there. Other SEC schools as well. He is a leaving to go to a better place type of player, not a leaving Clemson because he's not playing, like one of those 5-star guys sitting on the bench type of dudes. This guy's a real dude, and he's definitely going to affect the market. You mentioned Isaac Brown potentially to Texas. That's a big domino. Cam Coleman. There's some explosive players on the market. I think Miami would love to add one more explosive playmaker. If you're Miami, to me in the portal, like I mentioned, we talked about it. Impact players is kind of the key to the game. I would love to add a legitimately explosive, proven playmaker. Everybody would. They're expensive. But if you look at this offense was a lot better, I think, than maybe we thought it was or complained about it after SMU. They finished in top 20 in scoring offense. That's gone down a little bit in the playoffs because they're playing better teams. But over the regular season, a top 20 scoring offense got you to where you are now. Very efficient in terms of not having negative plays, good in the red zone, good on third down, all those things, very good. It was not explosive at all. Got more explosive towards the end of the year, but really not an explosive offense. Malachi Toney, one of the most explosive players in the country. Gerard Pringle, I think, will help your explosive running game. Mark Fletcher is doing what he does. But I think you need one more just scary player to not only take pressure off Toney, but to really scare defenses and change the way they play you with everything else that we do well. So I don't know who that is, but if we can get one explosive, truly explosive playmaker on offense, I think that's worthy of heavy investment.
I think this is pretty noteworthy, D. I'm going to bring this up right now. It came out an hour ago, but we have not talked about this. And it confirms what you and I have kind of said. And this is the quarterback spot, D, but this is Barry Jackson, who is as rock solid as anybody. He says that the transfer portal is now open, and the Canes have made an offer for Cincinnati's Brendan Sorsby per source. I can confirm now, D, from what I understand, and I'll say it, and I know we've been saying it. Sorsby would be, if Miami could right now say I could pick anyone in the country, I believe Sorsby would be who they want.
A lot of love for Sorsby. That's all legit. Texas Tech's in there. LSU is the name you hear from agents the most and just kind of getting the most buzz. I don't see it with Sorsby personally. As far as
you don't see him as a talent at quarterback like that, or you don't see him coming, because I can see him not coming, but I think he's got a lot to work with in terms of his tools.
I don't see him coming. I think Texas Tech or LSU.
Okay, yeah,
Maybe
I would agree with that.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I would agree with that. I think if you get him on campus, though, all bets are off.
All bets are off, but he's a Texas kid, Denton. I just don't see him, man. They just did a story for Nakos where he said Texas Tech, LSU, didn't mention Miami. So I don't see it. As a talent, I see it, but I don't see a gap. I think other guys are just as good that could be better. I think he is good. I think he's going to be – if he went to Miami, I think he'd do great. I think he goes to other places, he could be great. But I don't see I don't see a huge gap between him and some other guys personally. Not everybody agrees with me, but I think there's a lot of talented guys in this quarterback portal class that can do really great things. And I don't see it like 1A and then everybody else is below, in my opinion. But I think he's very good. But I don't see him for Miami. Here's something that's interesting, Pete, as far as the portal market for quarterbacks for Miami. And this is the first time I've seen it. This is no Miami info. Like, I've heard nothing. I've not heard this name from Miami once, but it was interesting to me, Pete. For the first time, I've heard a national person link Drew Mestamaker with the Miami Hurricanes. Now, I just want to say I've not heard the name. I've not heard the name from Miami.
I haven't either, yeah.
Agents talk.
It fits, though.
And agents talk sometimes like Miami's interested when Miami's really not, right? They do that. Caleb Hawkins, the running back for North Texas, who I thought was awesome. Looks like he's going to Oklahoma State. We'll talk about that if it becomes official. But it looks like he might be going to Oklahoma State, a 1-win team which took his head coach from North Texas, Eric Morris. They better be paying him because I think that's a questionable decision. You may love your coach, but I'm not going to. If I'm an offensive skill guy, I'm not going to a 1-11 team. But that's me. Whatever. He's going there. So that's an indicator that maybe everybody's falling more to Oklahoma State, which would take Mestemaker to Oklahoma State. That's what a lot of people have speculated from the start. But Nakos this morning, I'm pulling up the article right here, said, early school to watch at this point with Drew Mestemaker's Oklahoma State, where he has ties from his time at North Texas with Eric Morris, his head coach who found him and has now left Oklahoma State. But sources have told On3 to keep tabs on Indiana and Miami too for the freshman standout. In fact, the only quarterback in this whole article that was linked to Miami was not Sorsby, because in this article they say Texas Tech, LSU for Sorsby. I know we have interest, but that's what Nakos said this morning. And this is when it comes to national perspective, we all love Nakos. The only quarterback they linked to Miami was Mestemaker, which I was surprised by. Indiana looks like they're going to get Josh Hoover from TCU. RPO fit. They run a ton of RPO at Texas Christian. They run a ton of RPO at Indiana. He was committed to Indiana out of high school, even though he's a Texas guy, has had a lot of success. That fit makes sense. Looks like that's going to happen. Maybe what doesn't, these portal things change quick, as we learned. How many crystal balls in the portal get changed like that with agents just getting more money? But I see Hoover to Indiana. So if Indiana's out, and it's maybe Miami and Oklahoma State for Mestemaker, and we actually push, and again, this is all coming from external, not from Miami. It's interesting, man. It's interesting. Let's say Sorsby goes to the LSU.
I mean, it makes sense with Shannon Dawson. It seems like the type of guy that he'd be a fan of and think he can make it work with.
100%, man. So we'll see how that one plays out. I'm going to keep rolling with this portal stuff, Pete. I know you got to get rolling.
Yeah, I got a few more minutes. I just got to do a few things before we have Steve on later. But yeah, something else I heard last night, D, and I was texting you about it. But receiver is a very interesting one. I think it becomes we see Miami winning these games and we're thrilled that they're in the semifinals, but you could really say that the one thing missing right now on this team is still a receiver that can and Malachi Tony is Malachi Tony, but a guy who could just take the top off a defense and really scare them deep, right? A true number one in terms of size and all of that. And I think Malachi Tony's a number one, not to put it out there, but I'm talking about your traditional guy there.
No doubt. And look, some guys
I think they need to maybe spend there, D.
Yeah, I think so. And look, some guys on the roster you hope can do that as well. But one name that has been linked to Miami in this article, and it makes sense, is Terrell Anderson, former 4-star out of NC State. CJ Bailey's number one option. CJ Bailey's still on the portal. We talked about him so much. He's still not in the portal. I still think he's great, but that hasn't happened yet.
Oh, I gotta look into him, man. Lance said that their receivers were very average when we played them this year. So,
well, Terrell Anderson is going to get a lot of money in the portal. I'll tell you that right now. He's not going to be a small portal commodity. He was a highly ranked player out of high school, which is they usually don't go to NC State, but he's a local kid. I'm going to pull up his ranking in high school. He was, number 92nd player nationally. So he's a number 7 he's a 4-star portal ranking too. He's got a 94 portal ranking. So he's still a highly ranked portal guy. He's going to make a lot of money in the portal, but 16.1 yards per catch this year, 629 yards, 5 touchdowns. He was their big play guy all year. Number 9. So if you ever saw NC State, watch number 9. He made a lot of plays downfield, 6'4", 204 pounds from North Carolina. So that's one I'm keeping an eye on. Not giving any information on the Miami side. Again, I'm going to get you the full scoop on Miami. I gave him some space to let the dust settle trying to beat Ohio State. I want to get you the real deal. I'm not, as does Pete. So we know when to ask the questions here. But that's a name that's getting a lot of national connection to Miami, among many others. So I'll throw that name out there as well.
Yeah, and we've said it. Cam Coleman's a name that everyone's talking about, but he had a $2+ million deal on the table from Auburn, and I think he's really good, but that's a decision that That's a big decision to make, and he probably wants more than that.
I heard 3.5.
Yeah. So
what he wants. It doesn't mean
right.
It's
Doesn't
what
mean he's going to get it, but
yeah.
We'll see, man. Jeremiah, can we reignite that discussion?
Shoot, yeah. I mean, listen, I said it yesterday. My kids are doing good in school. I don't need to save money for college. I'll send their college funds to Jeremiah. Maybe we could lock that one up, but I don't see it. But we'll never know. We never know. You're always going to hear buzz, but I don't know. It's just.
And there's a lot of misconception going around about the $14 million that Miami, makes by winning here. And thank you to the ACC. What a phenomenal conference, who has these things in play there that we don't have to share the money with anyone. But that can't directly go to NIL. And I know people are like, oh, well, they'll just reallocate the funds and run it to NIL. But it's more complicated than I think people realize, and that's kind of a fund of its own. It's going to be distributed, from what I understand, throughout the athletic department, not just a football thing. Even though we understand a majority of that will go towards the moneymaker, which is football. But yeah, it's not really how it works, unfortunately.
Not how it works. Probably 4,000 on like and subscribe to the channel here as we get to the 2-hour 10-minute mark. Man, there's so much to talk about, and we're going on again. It's just. This is awesome, man. I'm loving this time period right now. This is heaven for Canes fans. Listen, if you guys want money to go to players to play football, CanesConnection.com/CIS, man. Stop messing around. Go to CanesConnection.com/CIS. Sign up today. You get exclusive access. We're going to do a portal. I know people are asking. We're going to do a Canes Connection call. I just want to get all the scoops so I can just give you the full rundown of what's happening in the portal and the game plan. We will once we get that, we'll set up a call. CanesConnection.com/CIS. I can say stuff on those calls I can't necessarily say in public settings. I'll say as much as I can here, but sometimes I can't, and that will go to Canes Connection members. CanesConnection.com/CIS. This is how we get players, man. All that $14 million, that'll build some nice buildings. That'll give some nice scholarships to students. You want to get players, CanesConnection.com/CIS. There's no secret. You like being in the Final Four. You like Cotton Bowls. You like Fiesta Bowls. You like the big time. This is how you get to the big time. Everybody that's part of Canes Connection, we appreciate you. You're part of this. We need more people to be part of this. So when that trophy goes up, hey, I did a little something to make that trophy get lifted. CanesConnection.com/CIS.
D, I gotta hop off here. I'll let you take this thing home. Again, appreciate to everyone who's been on while I've been on here. 4,000 on live. We'll be back at 2:00. D, you'll stay on here. But yeah, man, excited.
All right, man. We'll see you then. Go Canes.
Okay.
One last thing before I get Pete out of here, or before I get myself out of here, now that Pete's gone. No info on this. It's kind of like when I brought up Carson Beck last year. I had no info on it. It just made sense. And then ultimately making sense became actual reality. I got my eye on Alabama, man, because that program's a complete disaster. That was a total humiliation. Ty Simpson beat up. I don't see him going pro. I don't know how he can go pro after that finish to the season. But as a player, my opinion, you could disagree. I think Ty Simpson carried Alabama to the playoff. I think if you remove Ty Simpson from Alabama, they stink. They can't run the ball. Their coaching and their whole culture is soft as butter. Brian Williams took a huge step back. I think Ty Simpson is the reason they got where they got. And if I'm Ty Simpson, he's not going pro this year. He doesn't have the experience. You need starts to go pro, and he just doesn't have those. Although he is an older player, and they had the number one player in the country last year, Keelan Russell, him or Bryce Underwood, depending on the recruiting service, but they got him at quarterback waiting in the wings. Austin Mack looked pretty good too for them. Kalen DeBoer's quarterback that he brought over from Washington. Something's got to give in Alabama. That's not going to be a run it back situation. And I've heard they want to go with the younger player in Keelan Russell, because if they don't start him, he's gone. That's just kind of how it goes. So if they say, listen, we got Keelan Russell, we've paid him millions of dollars, he has to start. Well, then what happens to Ty Simpson? He's not going to go pro because the injury, the way it finished, I don't see him going pro. So what happens? He goes in the portal. And if Ty Simpson goes in the portal and Miami does not get a Sorsby or whoever, and they're maybe open for business, Why wouldn't you get Ty Simpson to Miami? I think it makes sense for Miami. He's plug and play, great leader, great player. I think it makes a ton of sense for Ty Simpson, who's been beat to piss because Alabama's offensive line is a paper tiger. Caleb Proctor, supposed to be the best offensive tackle in the country. I mean, we have 2 guys better than him. So I'm not saying I've heard it. I didn't hear it when I first said Beck. It just came to fruition because it made sense. I think Ty Simpson to Miami makes sense for Alabama because if they want to keep Keelan Russell, they got to play him. I think Ty Simpson makes sense for Ty Simpson, and I think Ty Simpson makes sense for Miami. No info, just putting the pieces together. It worked last year with Carson Beck. We spoke it into existence on the CanesInSight podcast. I'm doing it again with Ty Simpson. We've been doing it for a couple of weeks, but I can that last game to me furthered that theory. So we'll see how it plays out. Appreciate you, Professor. New follower. If you're not a new follower, like and subscribe to the show. We're going to keep this thing rolling. Again, we are nonstop, just like the Miami Hurricane team stores nonstop. Get your Fiesta Bowl gear right there on the Miami Hurricane team store, or your Cotton Bowl champion gear. Celebrate the win over Ohio State. You've been waiting a long time to celebrate that win. And then right away, you got the Fiesta Bowl. You got the Texas. I mean, every game has its own gear you can get, or just the playoff gear, the Malachi Tony jersey, which I saw a million of at AT&T Stadium. Whatever you need, go to Miami Hurricane Team Store, MiamiHGS.com, or the in-person store across the street from the University of Miami. Use promo code INSIGHT20 and get 20% off your first item. Like and subscribe to the show. Go Canes.